Chapter 807. Dijun is such an aloof and remote man, a cold and aloof man. In the entire Shoshin continent, how many women want to become Dijun's pillow? But Dijun doesn't even let them get close. How could such an emperor fall in love with a lowly mortal? It must be that woman who is desperately pestering Dijun. It must be that slut Jun Mayan who shamelessly seduced Dijun. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. That slut actually dared to defile Dijun, dared to steal her, Long Qingwan's man. At this very moment, Long Qingwan really wants to kill someone. But she really wants to confirm it with her own eyes. She wants to confirm that Di Mingju doesn't love Jun Mayan, that Jun Mayan is shamelessly pestering him, that Jun Mayan used a despicable and shameless method to confuse Dijun. She wants to see Dijun loathe and despise Jun Mayan, not letting her get close. Just like how Dijun loathes other women in the Shoshin continent. With great difficulty, Long Qingwan hides her ferocious and resentful face. When she raises her head, it has already turned into a shy and urgent longing. Old Ji, Qingwan really wants to see Dijun, even if it's just a glance from afar. Long Qingwan is very clear. If Di Mingju's body wants to go to the Yinwu continent from the Shoshin world, he inevitably needs a spatial, holy object as a medium. And the spatial, holy object in the polar domain is precisely the Qinkuan mirror. Through the Qinkuan mirror, you can see everything that's happening around Di Mingju. This absolutely won't do. Old Ji repeatedly shakes his head. The Qinkuan mirror is my polar domain's most precious treasure. What's more, before Dijun went down, he instructed us to absolutely not let anyone spy on his whereabouts. If Dijun were to find out, it would be a great crime. I am Dijun's future wife. Long Qingwan raises her chin, revealing an arrogant expression. If Dijun were to really find out, Old Ji, you can push the blame onto Qingwan. Even if Dijun were to punish anyone, he would never bear to punish me. This, Old Ji shows a hesitant expression. Ling Lan coughs softly beside Long Qingwan. Old Ji, our young master has always remembered your affection and help towards our young master. In the future, when our young master becomes the sect master of Tianyi Min and becomes the mistress of the domain, she will certainly not forget your kindness. Old Ji's expression became more and more hesitant. Ling Lan persisted, a meaningful smile appearing on her face. Now in the polar domain, Elder Ji, although you can be considered the Emperor's trusted aide, your status is still inferior to Elder Chang's. Your son is obviously talented and powerful, but he can't even become the leader of the Imperial Guard. Instead, he has to work for a little kid like Ying Mei. Ling Lan's words caused embarrassment to flash across Old Ji's face. But if our young master becomes the mistress of the polar domain, then it will be completely different. Ling Lan chuckled. Our young master knows how to make good use of people. How could a lowly brat like Ying Mei be qualified to follow the emperor? How could he be qualified to be the leader of the Imperial Guard? At that time, young master will definitely reorganize the polar domain and give the most capable people the important positions. Elder Ji's expression changed. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, this old man will bring Fairy Qingwan to see Juanshang. However, you must promise me that you will never get close to the heaven and earth mirror. You can only watch from afar. Otherwise, the God Monarch will find out immediately." Chapter 808. She absolutely doesn't believe that Dijun would really like a lowly mortal. She must see with her own eyes, see how Dijun dislikes this foxy woman who seduces him. As a sacred object of the polar domain, the Qinkuan mirror is naturally kept in an extremely secret place. Old Ji takes Long Qingwan all the way forward, and soon they arrive outside a quiet palace. The guard outside the palace stops Old Ji. Old Ji doesn't say anything, but takes out an ID card and makes a complicated seal with both hands in the air. Long Qingwan stands on the side, staring at the seal without blinking, her eyes deep and bottomless. After the seal is formed, the palace gate slowly opens, and the guard respectfully retreats to the side. Long Qingwan follows Old Ji inside, and soon sees the sacred object, Qinkuan mirror, placed in the center of the hall. A powerful force hits her in the face. It makes Long Qingwan shiver, and her face becomes a little pale. Old Ji raises his hand, and an invisible barrier shrouds her. His voice is gentle. The pressure of the Qinkuan mirror is very strong. Qingwan fairy, be careful. Long Qingwan takes a deep breath, and the spiritual energy in her body revolves, and soon her face returns to normal. Old Ji shows an expression of appreciation. With Long Qingwan's age, to have such cultivation and talent, and also have the support of the entire Tiani Min, she is truly the only woman who can match up with Junshang. Old Ji looks at the Qinkuan mirror, and his hands quickly make a seal. An extremely complicated seal is formed, and the originally dark Qinkuan mirror shines with a dazzling light. Immediately afterwards, the bronze mirror ripples like water and gradually shows a picture. In the picture, the first thing that is printed is Di Mingju's incomparably handsome face. Jun Shang's appearance is still grave and stern, dignified, and aloof. However, seeing Di Mingju's movements in the picture, Old Ji is dumbfounded. What is Jun Shang doing? Why is he standing in front of the stove? Why is he cutting vegetables? Why is he wearing a ridiculous apron? Wait a minute. Is this really their supreme Dijun? Old Ji can't help but wipe his eyes, and then suddenly turns to look at Long Qingwan beside him. He wanted to explain to Fairy Qingwan that their monarch's supreme dignity was awe-inspiring and inviolable. However, when he turns his head, he sees Long Qingwan stupidly staring at Di Mingju's handsome face, her eyes filled with worship and infatuation. Old Ji stroked his beard and nodded in satisfaction. However, at this moment, Long Qingwan's expression suddenly changed. Her originally cold and peerless face twisted in an instant, becoming incomparably ferocious. Disbelief, shock, and bone-deep jealousy rose from her eyes. Old Man Ji was stunned. He turned around and was stunned once again when he saw the scene in the heaven and earth mirror. Long Qingwan, on the other hand, stared fixedly at the scene in the copper mirror, her body trembling slightly because of extreme anger. In the heaven and earth mirror, the high and mighty man seemed to have heard something and turned around. A trace of bone-chilling gentleness appeared on his stern face. In front of him, a young girl in green leisurely walked over. The image in the heaven and earth mirror was blurry, but one could see that the girl had an unparalleled beauty and a pair of peach blossom eyes that seemed capable of seducing one's soul. Jun Mayan. This woman is Jun Mayan. Chapter 809. Seeing Mayan approaching, Di Mingju opens his arms, wanting to pull her into his embrace. But who would have thought that Mayan would reveal a sly smile, bending down to slip under his arms. Her target, the delicious food that has just come out of the pot. Di Mingju's complexion darkens all of a sudden. He grabs her, presses her to the side of the stove, and kisses her directly. Beside the smoke-stained stove, a tall and handsome man presses down on a beautiful and slender girl, kissing her with desire and tenderness. This scene is so beautiful that it makes people wish that time would stop at this moment, never to flow again. But this scene, in Long Qingwan's eyes, makes her hate it so much that she can't breathe. Her hands are tightly clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms, digging into her flesh, but she doesn't feel anything. At that moment, Long Qingwan's hatred is even more insane than when she found out that Di Mingju helped Mayan remove the Yin-Yang Sha. She originally thought that even if Mayan, this slut, seduced Di Mingju and used a shameless trick to climb into his bed, with Di Mingju's callous nature, he would never say anything nice to her. That's because Di Jun has always been like this to her, to everyone else. But the scene before her subverts all of Long Qingwan's imagination and hopes. It also makes her feel that her pride and self-esteem are being trampled underfoot, ruthlessly trampled. Di Jun is actually so gentle to this slut, so intimate, so affectionate. Could it be that Di Jun has really fallen in love with this Shin musician remnant? He even wants to give her the position of Polar Domain's mistress? No, absolutely not. Bang! Long Qingwan doesn't even look at Old Ji. She directly slams open the door and rushes out. Unfortunately, Old Ji seems to be in a daze, looking at the scene in the Qinkuan mirror. He doesn't even notice that Long Qingwan has left. He has never seen Dijun show such an expression ever since those unforeseen events that happened in his childhood. Gentle, peaceful, and happy. Old Ji is a little silly, muttering, Dijun, do you really like this mortal woman that much? On the way back to Tiananmen, Long Qingwan makes Ling Lan and the others not dare to breathe heavily. As soon as she returns to Tiananmen, Long Qingwan smashes everything in the room. Ling Lan and the others went up to dissuade her, but she used them as a punching bag and whipped them more than a dozen times until their bodies were badly mangled. After tossing and turning for a long time, Long Qingwan finally calmed down her violent mood and sat on her seat with a gloomy face. Ling Lan and the others walked forward with trepidation and whispered, Young master, why don't we report this to the headmaster? Although the marriage agreement between the Polar Domain and the Tiananmen did not have a contract, both parties were well aware of it. It's too much for the emperor to humiliate you like this. If you tell the sect master, he will definitely seek justice for you. The sect master of the Tiananmen, Long Yuexia, has been injured since the last time Di Mingju destroyed the Great Mountain Protecting Array and killed her disciples in front of them. She's been in closed-door meditation all this time. Long Qingwan takes a deep breath and shakes her head. No, I must deal with that slut Junmai myself. She was going to tear that slut to shreds. But Ling Lan hesitated. The monarch is by that woman's side. If we make a move, I'm afraid that the monarch, then just let Dijun return from the Yinwu continent. Long Qingwan laughs coldly. Chapter 8:10. Long Qingwan raises her head, her eyes dark and grim, like a bottomless abyss. Go now and secretly release the news that Dijun's body is in the Yinwu continent to that group of people in the Polar Domains, Zijin Palace. I believe that Mo Rufeng and the others will definitely know how to seize this opportunity. Hearing that, Ling Lan suddenly widens her eyes, saying in disbelief, Young master, if this news is released, the Polar Domain will inevitably be in chaos. Dijun may even be in danger. She hasn't finished speaking when Long Qingwan's cold gaze sweeps over. Ling Lan immediately closes her mouth. Long Qingwan sneers. If he can't belong to me, then I might as well destroy him. Even if she herself can't marry Di Mingju, she will never let that Shen musician remnant get everything that should belong to her. What's more, Dijun has been the Polar Domain's king for so long. Do you think that Mo Rufeng and that group of wastes can really overthrow Dijun? I'm just using them to let Dijun leave that slut side. Ling Lan immediately nods. Yes, young master. This subordinate will do it at once. Wait a minute. Long Qingwan calls her back, takes out a jade slip, and carves down the talisman array that Old Ji had just arranged outside the Chinkoan Mirror Palace. She hands it to Ling Lan. Give this to Mo Rufeng as well. Remember, you must not let anyone know that this matter is related to my Tiananmen. Ling Lan bows and leaves. Long Qingwan sits in the same place. The image of Di Mingju embracing and kissing Junmayan unconsciously emerges in her mind. She tightly clenches her teeth, her eyes red. Junmayan, just you wait. Very soon, your time of death will come. Anyone who wants to snatch something from her, Long Qingwan, will not have a good end. The former Lu Se and her fellow apprentice were like this, and now Junmayan is also like this. Di Mingju, the position of Polar Domain's mistress, is destined to be hers. Yinwu Continent, Netherflame Valley's dining hall. Mayan originally wanted to tease the especially cute Jun Shangdaran, who was wearing an apron. She didn't expect to go for wool and come home shorn. She was pressed against the stove and severely punished. Di Mingju takes a long time before releasing her red and swollen lips. He presses her into his arms, calming his turbulent desire. His chest heaved up and down as he gasped for breath. The voice that comes out is even more unbelievably hoarse. Yin Yin, you're teasing Bin Jun like this. Do you want to try it with Bin Jun in the kitchen? Mu Yin angrily covers Di Mingju's mouth to stop him from continuing. This bastard was getting more and more shameless. In the beginning, she was so innocent that she didn't even know how to kiss. But now, he was not afraid of vulgar things and dared to say anything. Di Mingju takes her hand and presses it to his lips to kiss it. He felt a little regretful, but he really wanted to give it a try here. It was a pity that the dining hall was so crowded. In his mind, he was thinking that in the future, he and Mu Yan's bedroom should naturally have a big dining hall, a big bathing pool, and a big veranda. Thinking about it, Dimingju only feels that his body is a little hot, and all the blood in his body seems to be rushing to one place. Just as Mayan is about to say something, her body suddenly soars into the air, and Dimingju carries her horizontally in his arms. Startled, she hurriedly wrapped her arms around the man's neck. She hears the man's hoarse voice in her ears, "Yin Yin, Ben Jun is hungry. If you're hungry, then eat." Chapter 811. I have to say, Jun Shangdaren's cooking skills are getting better and better. However, before Mu Yin could open her mouth, she suddenly realized what the man meant and blushed. This bastard! As soon as she raises her head, she comes face to face with Jun Shangdaren's resentful expression. "Yin Yin, count it yourself. How many days has that little bastard been forcibly occupying you?" Ever since they came back from the cave that day, Xiao Bao has been like a little dragon guarding a treasure, sticking to Mu Yin all day long. Of course, the most important thing isn't to fight for favor with Dimingju. But this time, Xiao Bao was really frightened. Regardless of whether it was the fat rabbit or his mother, they were both seriously injured because of him. In fact, it almost left him. In Xiao Bao's short life, he had never truly experienced what it meant to be parted by death. This time, although he was unconscious most of the time, he was not completely unaware. It was precisely because of this hazy despair that he felt even more fearful and insecure. He seems to have returned to his childhood, when he needed Mayan to hug him tightly to sleep. As long as he can't feel Mayan's breath, he will be flustered, even shivering in his sleep. Mu Yin naturally felt extremely distressed for her son, so she let him act coquettishly without any bottom line. As a result, our pitiful Jun Shangdaren has just started eating meat, and it's the time when he's the most hungry. Yet, his wife has been forcibly taken away by his son. Unfortunately, he can't just throw this little bastard out or teach him a lesson. That's because Dimingju's heart couldn't help but soften when he meets Xiao Bao's big eyes, which are very similar to his own. Shuffling footsteps could be heard from outside the dining hall. From time to time, he could even hear Xiao Bao saying, "Is Nyangqin here?" Dimingju's expression becomes more and more gloomy and resentful. Mu Yin looks at the handsome side profile of the man who is like a child in a fit of pique, and her heart becomes unreasonably soft for a moment. Hearing the footsteps and voices getting closer, Dimingju accepts his fate and puts Mayan down. Just as he's about to let go, Mayan suddenly turns around and grabs his collar. Dimingju stares blankly. Before he could react, the scenery in front of him suddenly turns upside down. The two figures appeared in the space. Dimingju still hasn't come back to his senses, looking at Mayan somewhat lifelessly. Looking at the man's appearance, Mu Yin felt that he was indescribably cute. She couldn't help but tiptoe and kiss him on the lips. Dimingju's eyes darken all of a sudden. "Xiao Bao is calling you outside." "Yeah, I heard you." Mu Yin grinned. "But I think Big Darling needs my company more now." Who was the big treasure? Dimingju's complexion stiffens. He is very indignant that a dignified monarch like him is called a big treasure. He didn't want face. Dimingju wants to express his protest, but his body and the surging sweetness and shyness in his heart honestly betray him. Suddenly, Mayan moves closer to him and leans against his face. Beaming, she says, "How strange. I actually saw Jun Shangdaren's face turn red." "Darling, you're so shy." Dimingju can't bear it anymore, and he pulls the girl into his arms. His large hands unstoppably pushed open her clothes and caressed the young girl's soft, white skin. The intimate touch made the two of them let out a sigh that sounded like both pleasure and pain. Dimingju looks at the girl he longs for day and night in his arms, longing for her to the point of almost going crazy. Little by little, his eyes become bottomless, and then ignite a little bit of prairie fire. Chapter 812. Mayan stares blankly. Before she could react, her lips and tongue are already blocked, and she's pressed down on the soft grass. By the time she realizes what Dimingju is talking about, her face immediately flushes red. She's so angry and ashamed that she can't kick the person on top of her. Very well, she wouldn't dare to call a certain someone Big Darling anymore. Outside the space, Xiao Bao carries the fat rabbit to the dining hall. He sees a table full of food, but he doesn't see Mu Yin and Di Mingju. He can't help but wonder, Bunny, where are mother and father? I clearly heard Sister Ing Mei say that they were here. And why can't we enter mother's space? The fat rabbit whimpered, yawned, and turned around. Was there even a need to ask? Of course, the she-devil and great demon king were working hard to make dolls. Little master, don't you want a younger sister? I might be able to fulfill my wish very soon. Although Mu Yin and Xiao Bao returned safely from the last battle at the Wuwang Mountains, the Ink Camp lost quite a few elites. These people originally came from Wanrenku and followed Mayan all the way. When they died, they had no parents, no wives, and no children. Therefore, Mayan orders people to erect a stone tablet in the center of Hellfire Valley. On the stone tablet, these people were engraved, as well as the names of the Nether Flame Army soldiers who had died in the Battle of Tiandao Sect. Mu Yin looked at the densely packed crowd standing in the square of Hellflame Valley and said in a deep voice, in the future, you can forget Hellflame Valley, forget Jun Mu Yin and Jun Machin. You can forget everything, but you must never forget the names of these brothers. Even if there comes a day when all of you leave the Yinwu continent and go to the Xiuzhen continent, or even the wider world, you must firmly engrave these names in your minds. Because these names and the survivors formed the soul of the Nether Flame Army. When they heard Mayan's first sentence, everyone in the square showed a pained and resolute expression. But when they heard the last sentence, most of them were dumbfounded. For a moment, the square fell into a dead silence. Following that, loud discussions broke out one after another. What did Miss mean by that? Leave the Yinwu continent and go to the Xiuzhen continent? Could it be that we can all leave Yinwu continent? How is this possible? There are very few people who can ascend from the Yinwu continent to the Xiuzhen continent. Look at the Tiandao sect. There are so many Xiantian elders, but not a single one has ascended in hundreds of years. They can't even pass the lightning tribulation. But I heard that even our leader obtained a miraculous pill refined by Mississippi. After consuming it, he would be able to mold his spirit root and ascend to the cultivation continent. AI, just how precious is that pill? How could it be our turn? The sounds of chattering could be heard continuously. Unruffled and unruffled, Mayan sits on top and plays the zither, not paying attention to their excitement. She was playing a comforting song, hoping that the souls of the Nether Flame Army could follow the guidance of the zither and find peace. Xiao Bao knelt in front of the stone tablet and respectfully kowtowed. He knew that it was these people's sacrifice that allowed him and the fat rabbit to survive. After kowtowing, Xiao Bao stood up and walked to the center of the square. He raised his voice and said, "Silence." His childish voice didn't carry any pressure or deterrence. However, these two short words caused the nearly 10,000 people in the square to fall completely silent. Chapter 8:13. Mu Yin looked at this scene and smiled lightly. Even Di Mingju, who was standing at the side, showed a barely satisfied expression. He was Di Mingju's son. If he didn't even have this bit of dignity, wouldn't he be ashamed to death? Xiao Bao's gaze swept across everyone and slowly said, 3 days later, the Nether Flame Army will hold a competition. The people of the Nether Flame Army in the square did not reveal a surprised expression. They had long heard from the captain and commander that the Nether Flame Army might hold a competition, and the result of this competition would be the turning point of their destiny, so they must grasp this opportunity well. So during this period of time, the 4 divisions of the Nether Flame Army had been training crazily every day, but they were also wondering what the turning point of their destiny was. And today, they finally got the answer from the mouth of the little master. Mother has refined a kind of elixir called Spirit Molding Pill. After taking the Spirit Molding Pill, it can forcefully stimulate the spirit root in one's body. Even if one only has a trace of spiritual cultivation talent, it can also stimulate the spirit root. After possessing the spirit root, one can ascend to the Xiuzhen continent even without experiencing the thunder tribulation. In the competition, The top 300 of each division will receive a spirit molding pill. Whoosh! This time, the entire square really burst into an uproar. Heavens! The reward for the top 300 was actually a spirit molding pill. It was actually a spirit molding pill. Could it be that they could really follow the commander and miss to ascend to the Xiaojin continent? Xiao Bao cleared his throat and let them all quiet down. Then he continued, those ranked after 300, but whose strength and efforts have obtained the commander's recognition, will receive the spirit-raising pill. Its effect is not as outstanding as the spirit-molding pill, but there is a certain chance of molding the spirit root. As soon as these words came out, those who were dejected because of their weaker strength immediately became spirited again. Even if the effect of the spirit-raising pill was not as good as the spirit-molding pill, at least there was still hope, right? And that meant that they were not abandoned by the Miss and Little Master. In fact, Mu Yin only refined 1,000 spirit-molding pills because there was nothing she could do about it. It was not easy to refine the spirit-molding pill, and the materials were precious. To be able to refine 1,000 pills was already the result of her exhausting her spirit power every day. Later on, Di Mingju couldn't bear to watch her torment herself like this, but he couldn't dissuade her, so he could only give her the recipe for the raising spirit pill. However, after going all out to refine the spirit-molding pill during this period of time, Mu Yan's cloud-birth skill had risen by leaps and bounds. In the past, he could only refine 3 to 5 pills at a time, and he would have to rest for a while before he could continue refining. But now, a furnace can produce dozens of pills, and the quality of each pill can make an alchemist of Jin Feng's level feel ashamed and want to die. Long live the young miss, long live the young master. Someone shouted and knelt down. Following that, everyone in the square began to kneel one by one. Nearly 10,000 people shouted, "Long live His Majesty!" That tsunami-like formation shook the heavens and the earth. In the center of the square, Yin Haoyin, Ru Yin, Feng Haidang, and Bai Yichen stood around Xiao Bao. They couldn't help but look at each other, and their eyes revealed an expression of joy. All of them had a bleak and unbearable past. Fortunately, they were lucky enough to meet the young miss, each other, and this group of brothers. Chapter 8:14. Mu Yin can't stand this kind of scene. Seeing that everyone has knelt down, she puts away the Tian Emo Qin and turns around to leave. As soon as Xiao Bao saw that his mother had left, he didn't even bother to ask them to get up. He strode forward with his short legs and followed her. Behind him was a bald rabbit and an unbelievably beautiful red bird. Xiao Bao pounces into Mu Yan's arms all of a sudden, struggling to move Di Mingju's hand away from Mu Yan. "You've already occupied Mother for a long time. Today, it's my turn." "Brat, your mother was originally mine. Do you still want a sister? Then give it to my sister now." He had wanted his soft and cute sister for a long time. Di Mingju smiles faintly, moving closer to Mayan's ear and saying, "Yin Yin, you see, Xiao Bao said that he wants a little sister. Shouldn't we work harder?" Mayan gives him a blank look, picks up Xiao Bao, and ignores this thick-skinned man. A man's deep voice suddenly comes to her ears. "Yin Yin, before you give birth to your sister, shouldn't we have a wedding?" Mayan's footsteps halt, and she turns to look at Di Mingju. Her expression is somewhat complicated. Have you really thought it through?" The Polar Domain's sovereign emperor, with such a lofty status, wanted to marry a mortal from a lowly world like her? Di Mingju grabs Xiao Bao by the collar and throws him aside. Surprisingly, Xiao Bao didn't resist this time. After falling to the ground, she only grabs the hem of Di Mingju's clothes. She raises her small head and looks at Mayan with eager eyes. Mu Yin is faced with an adult and a child staring at her. For a moment, she is somewhat silent. In fact, she had always known. Don't look at how Xiao Bao and Di Mingju don't seem to get along. But deep in his heart, Xiao Bao has always regarded Di Mingju as his father. He has called Di Mingju father more than once in private, but when facing Di Mingju, he refuses to say these two words, because he also knows that Di Mingju isn't his real father. Although he longed for this powerful, handsome, and reliable man to be his real father, that would be great. One time, when they were sleeping, Xiao Bao even asked Mu Yin, "Nyang Qin, What is marriage? When you and Daddy got married, did Daddy become Xiaobao's real father? In fact, he has always longed for the time when he can properly call Di Mingju Daddy. Mu Yin raises her head, forcing herself to be calm in front of Di Mingju, but she can't hide her nervous expression. Suddenly, she burst into laughter. All right. After saying that, she didn't care about her father and son's dull expression and turned around to leave. Di Mingju stands there in a daze for a long time before he abruptly comes back to his senses. Xiaobao, what did your mother just say? Xiaobao blinked his big eyes and suddenly said seriously, I'm not telling you. Then he turns around and runs towards Mayan. As soon as he turned around, his little face broke into a smile, and he could not suppress the happiness and joy that spread through his heart. Nyangqin and Papa are getting married. He would no longer be a child without a father. He would even have a soft and cuddly sister. Mayan enters the room and wants to close the door. A figure flashed in, and she didn't have time to react. The door banged loudly, and even Xiaobao and the fat rabbit Qiuqiu were locked outside the room. And Mu Yin is directly pressed against the door. The man's hot and messy breath hits her face. Yin Yin, say your answer again. Chapter 8:15. June Mayan. Di Mingju angrily lowers his head and bites her lips. You promised to marry me, to be my wife. He's not using a question sentence, but an affirmative sentence. Mayan feels the pain and glares at him, pouting coquettishly. Are you a dog? Actually biting people? Di Mingju's hands are on both sides of her, his chest gently heaving up and down. Soon after, a gentle and joyful smile slowly creeps up his brows and the corners of his eyes. Mayan is a little dazed. This is the first time she's seen June Shangdaern reveal such a childish smile. Just like a child who originally had nothing, getting the sweetest and most precious candy in the world. Yin Yin, you really promised to marry me? His voice is soft and hoarse, carrying a cautious, dreamy quality. Mayan's heart suddenly softens to an unspeakable degree. She reaches out and caresses the man's face, then gently moves it away, pressing it on his chest. Fool, do you think I'm blind? The most charming, most outstanding, best man in the world is right by my side, waiting for me in a place where I can see him whenever I turn around. How stupid am I to not cherish it? Di Mingju, I'll answer you again. I promise to marry. However, Mayan hasn't finished speaking when Di Mingju's complexion suddenly changes. In a split second, his expression changes from ecstasy to alarm and anger. There's also a trace of painful paleness floating between his brows, but he restrains it in the blink of an eye. Di Mingju, what's wrong? Mayan is startled by the change in his expression, and she reaches out to grab his hand. But she finds that Di Mingju's hand, and even his body, are slowly becoming transparent. Di Mingju takes a deep breath and suddenly reaches out to pull her into his embrace. But this embrace isn't as tight as before, with a kind of emptiness that's about to disappear. Mayan, listen to me. I'm about to leave. Mayan nervously raises her head to look at him. What happened? Polar domain. Something happened. Di Mingju slowly says, I have to go back immediately to deal with it. What happened? Will you be in danger? Mayan unblinkingly stares at Di Mingju's face. His figure is already somewhat transparent, and his complexion is slightly pale. But Di Mingju's expression is the same as usual, without a trace of pain or panic. There was only reluctance. Mayan's heart calmed down little by little, followed by the same turbulent feelings of reluctance and longing. Yes, this man had not left, but he had already begun to miss him. Di Mingju reveals a gentle smile, lowering his head to kiss her forehead. Just some jumping clowns? How could Ben Jun put them in my eyes? There's an unparalleled self-confidence and arrogance in his voice, but it soon turns into a soft sigh. It's just that in the short term, I won't be able to return to the Yinwu continent. This time, even Ingmei and Hanyi might have to go back with me. Yin Yin, I'm sorry, Mu Yin covered his mouth and laughed in a carefree manner. If you know me well enough and want to spend a lifetime with me, then don't say such apologies. I'm not a daughter that attaches itself to you. I'll be with you in life and death, but it's impossible for you to stay by my side and protect me at all times. That way, I would lose my courage, lose myself, and become unlike Junmayan. Chapter 8:16. I finally got to hear your answer. With great difficulty, Yinyan finally agrees to marry him. His figure became fainter and fainter, as if he had melted into the air. However, his hand was still tightly holding onto Mu Yin, full of reluctance and pain. Yinyan, wait for me. No matter where you are, I will definitely find you. Wait for me. Di Mingju's figure finally disappears without a trace. Mayan stands there in a daze for a long time before she retracts her hand and looks at her palm. The palm that was just held by the man seemed to be burning. That place had been branded with the deepest imprint, the deepest longing. Patter. A teardrop falls on her palm. Mayan blankly raises her hand to touch her face, only to find that her face is already covered in tears. She stares blankly for a long time, then she says softly, "That idiot Di Mingju. It's just a trip back to the Shoshin continent. Why does it look like it's a life and death parting?" Wiping away her tears, Mu Yin walks out of the room. When Xiaobao sees her, he immediately pounces over. Seeing that she doesn't have Di Mingju by her side, Xiaobao can't help but look inside. Where's father? How could his father be so good that he didn't fight with him over Nyangqin? A perfect smile appeared on Mu Yan's face. She patted Xiaobao's head. Your father has to go back for a while. I'm afraid you won't be able to see him for a while. Xiaobao's big sparkling eyes immediately dimmed. He raised his head to look at the distant horizon and murmured in frustration, "Mother, is father's home very far away?" "Yes, very far." "Then can't we go with Daddy?" "Right now, I can't. Only when we become strong enough will we be able to return with father." Hearing this, Xiaobao slowly clenched his small fists, his blue eyes revealing a resolute expression. Xiaobao will definitely become stronger. Then mother, father, and Xiaobao, the whole family would never have to be separated again. Miss, just now, Ingmei and Han Yadarin suddenly disappeared. Ru Yan's anxious voice comes from not too far away, and Han Yadarin didn't look right before he disappeared. Ru Yan's words make Xiaobao's small body suddenly tremble. He grabs Mu Yan's hand tightly and raises his head to look at her. Why did Daddy disappear? Even Han Yi and Ingmei Jiejie disappeared? Did Daddy really come home? Mu Yan strokes Xiaobao's head and looks at the flustered Ru Yan. Don't worry, they're fine. They're just returning to the polar domain. The polar domain is the place where Di Mingju and Ingmei came from. Many people in Hellfire Valley know this. However, only a few people knew where the polar domain was. Son-in-law, why did they suddenly return to the polar domain? Is there something urgent? Xiaobao also widens his eyes, looking at Mu Yin without blinking, for fear that she would say something bad. Mayan smiles faintly and says slowly, "Oh, he probably found out that the betrothal gifts aren't ready yet, so he went back to prepare them." Ru Yin and Xiaobao stared blankly for a moment, then their expressions abruptly changed from nervousness to ecstasy. "Miss, you're finally going to marry the son-in-law. That's great. I'm going to tell everyone right now. Haha, everyone will definitely be overjoyed." A joyful smile also appeared on Little Treasure's delicate little face. So the lecher had gone to prepare the betrothal gifts. Chapter 8:17. Although Xiaobao was smart, he was still a child. As soon as Mayan says this, she immediately believes it without a doubt, just like Ru Yin. She happily carries the fat rabbit and goes to cultivate. His father wasn't around, so he had to work hard to cultivate. When Daddy comes back, Xiaobao wants to give him a surprise. Mu Yin looks at Xiaobao's departing back until his figure completely disappears. The lazy smile on his face was slowly replaced by worry. Raising her head to look at the distant horizon, a whisper spills from her lips and teeth. "Di Mingju, you promised me that you would come find me. You promised me." Shoshin Continent, Polar Domain, Lingxiao Hall. At this moment, the palace in the Lingxiao Hall where the sacred object, the heaven and earth mirror, was tightly surrounded. There were obvious red marks on the surface of the universe mirror. From afar, it looked like a crack, but upon closer inspection, one would discover that the heaven and earth mirror was covered in a stinky liquid. Elder Chong, Elder Ji, and Star Wolf stood outside the hall, glaring at the purple-clad young man and his subordinates who were guarding the universe mirror. Imo Ruffung, don't go too far. He clearly knew that the cosmos mirror was the supreme holy object of the polar domain, yet he dared to use such an evil thing like the upper evil water to contaminate it? Aren't you afraid that the Emperor will come out of seclusion and throw you into the 18th level of the burning water prison? The purple-clothed youth had a handsome appearance, but there was a gloomy and ruthless air between his brows. Hearing this, he couldn't help but sneer. Wait for Deming Ju to come out? Are you sure that if the universe mirror is destroyed, Deming Ju can still come out? Elder Chang's expression suddenly changed. What nonsense are you talking about? Ha ha ha, you think I don't know? Imo Ruffing sneers. Deming Ju's body went to the Yinwu continent through the Chinkuan mirror. As long as the upper evil water thoroughly erodes the Chinkuan mirror, I'm afraid that Deming Ju will never be able to return. Even if he does come back, I'm afraid he'll be heavily injured and beaten like a piece of trash by me. You? How do you know that Jun went to the Yinwu continent? Elder Chang almost bellows. The faces of Star Wolf and the others behind him were filled with shock and anger. Only Elder Ji seemed to have thought of something. His body swayed, and his face turned pale. However, everyone's eyes were focused on Imo Ruffung, and no one noticed anything wrong with him. I naturally have my ways. Imo Ruffing reached out to the heaven and earth mirror and injected spiritual energy into it. Red marks that looked like cracks immediately spread and grew on the heaven and earth mirror. The entire numinous sky hall began to shake violently, as if it would collapse at any moment. Stop! Boss Chang roared. Imo Ruffung, do you know that if you rebel against your superiors in the polar domain and destroy a holy relic, you will be punished with the death penalty of having your soul destroyed? Rebelling? Imo Ruffing's nerves seem to have been touched, and he suddenly roars hysterically, Deming Ju's throne was exchanged with my parents' lives. This throne should have been mine. What right do he and all of you have to say that I'm rebelling against my superiors? Today, I will destroy the sacred object and make it so that Deming Ju will never be able to rise again. I will be the king of the polar domain. With that, he waved his hand. The people beside him immediately stepped forward, raised the weapons in their hands, and fiercely slashed at the universe mirror. The expressions of Elder Chong and the others changed drastically. They roared and pounced forward. However, he was still a step too late. Chapter 818. And most importantly, this Imo Ruffung, no matter how excessive the things he does, in the polar domain, no one will be moved by him. Under the fierce attack, the Chinkuan mirror is about to be thoroughly eroded by the upper evil water. At this moment, a gale sweeps through the entire hall. The whistling sound of the wind is accompanied by a pressure that can topple mountains and overturn the seas, shrouding everyone present. One by one, Imo Ruffing's men fall to the ground, vomiting blood. Just a moment later, they breathe their last. Imo Ruffing falls to the ground, his body twitching incessantly, blood gurgling out of the corner of his mouth. Immediately after, a foot steps on his chest. With a crack, his ribs are directly broken. The man's deep and dignified voice rings out in the deathly silence, making people's souls tremble. A waste like you also wants to take Ben Jun away. Imo Ruffing's gaze slowly moves up, finally falling on Deming Ju's incomparably handsome, dignified face. Puff! A mouthful of blood suddenly spurts out. No, impossible, how could you? How could you appear? Aren't you in Yinwu? Yinwu continent? Compared to Imo Ruffing's shock and amazement, Elder Chong and the others are overjoyed, and they all kneel down. Greetings, Junshang. Junshang, you finally returned. Are you all right? Deming Ju doesn't pay attention to Elder Chong and the other salutations. Instead, he looks at Imo Ruffung under his feet with an ice-cold gaze. It seems that Ben Jun was too lenient towards you before. Imo Ruffung was originally sure that Deming Ju wouldn't kill him. Even Deming Ju's men didn't dare to make a move against him. But at this moment, when he comes into contact with Di Mingju's bone-chilling eyes, he shudders. He can realize that this time, Di Mingju really wants to kill him. He really wants his life. No, you can't kill me. Your life was saved by my parents. Di Mingju, you can't be ungrateful. In order to save you, my parents didn't even care about my life and death. Di Mingju, you promised my parents that you would take good care of me. You want to go back on your word? Di Mingju condescendingly looks down at him. The corner of his mouth hooks up into a cold smile. Don't worry, not only will Ben Jun not kill you, but I will also properly worship you. However, don't even think about Zijin Palace and your cultivation in the future. No, Di Mingju, you can't treat me like this. Ah! Imo Ruffung let out a heart-wrenching scream and quickly collapsed to the ground. He twitched a few times and fainted. Di Mingju has directly wasted more than half of his cultivation. The entire hall was as silent as cicadas in winter. Even Elder Chong and the others didn't dare to breathe loudly. Old Man Ji felt cold all over, as if he would faint at any time. Only Ying Mei and Han Yi, who were standing on the side, can't get used to it. Wasn't Imo Ruffung courting death? Jun Shang and Miss June are currently in love with each other, unable to part from each other. Imo Ruffung actually dared to destroy the Qinkuan mirror, forcing Di Mingju to be separated from Mayan. And now that more than half of the Qinkuan mirror has been destroyed, Di Mingju would no longer be able to go to the Yinwu continent to reunite with Mayan in a short period of time. How could he not be angry? He simply hates it to the point that he wants to go crazy. Okay? Chapter 819. Heh, with just a piece of trash like him? What a joke. Di Mingju orders people to take Imo Ruffung away and dismisses everyone. Only Elder Chong, Elder Ji, Star Wolf, and Ying Mei were left in the hall. Di Mingju's body swayed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Jun Shang, how are you? Han Yi says with a sobbing tone. Without the protection of the Qinkuan mirror, Ying Mei and I wouldn't have been able to return in one piece. Jun Shang used his own divine power to protect us. But the spatial tears that Jun Shang has suffered are clearly more serious than mine and Ying Mei's. Di Mingju coldly says, Ben Jun is fine. Why are you panicking? Elder Chang glared at Elder Ji and roared, What are you waiting for? Why aren't you coming to treat Jun Shang? Old Man Ji snapped out of his daze and stumbled over to the front. But Di Mingju waves his hand away, coldly saying, Ben Jun is well aware of my own body. I only need to go into seclusion to recuperate. Hearing Di Mingju say that he's fine, and seeing his calm and composed appearance, everyone breathes a sigh of relief. But at this time, Di Mingju's cold voice suddenly rings out, Imo Ruffung, how did you know that Ben Jun is in the Yinwu continent? How can he get close to the universe mirror? Hearing this, Old Man Ji's body suddenly trembled, and his face immediately turned ashen. It's been nearly a month since Di Mingju left. The competition of the Nether Flame Army finally came to an end. In the end, more than 1,000 Nether Flame Army elites obtained the Spirit Molding Pill. As for the other members of the Nether Flame Army, they received the Spiritual Cultivation Pill. At this time, in the Yinwu continent, no one knows that in the coming year, the number of people who ascended to the Immortal Cultivation continent would increase exponentially. In the end, more than 3,000 people successfully molded their spiritual roots and followed Mayan's footsteps to the Xiuzhen continent. Even those who stayed behind had their cultivations advance by leaps and bounds, becoming a tyrant of the Yinwu continent. Very soon, Jun Mayan and her Nether Flame Army will become a legend. In the Yinwu continent, it is a miracle that no one has ever done before, and no one will be able to surpass. Your injury is no longer a problem. Mu Yin withdraws her hand from Chang Yu's wrist and gently says, Now that your Dantian has been activated, internal force can no longer be used. The Yinwu continent is no longer suitable for your survival. Chang Yu, I have already expelled the desolate qi from your body. It is time for you to return to the place that belongs to you. Chang Yu's body tensed up. His gaze unblinkingly falls on Mayan. Miss, I don't want to go. Mayan smiles faintly. You don't belong here. The barren air of the Yinwu continent will only corrode your spiritual root little by little. Furthermore, there will be a day when the Nether Flame Army and I will head to the cultivation continent. At that time, we will meet again. Now, many people in the Hellflame Valley had noticed Chang Yu's change and incompatibility. His appearance had almost no resemblance to before. That ordinary face had been replaced by a resolute face that seemed to have been carved out by a chisel. This was all because Chang Yu's previous cultivation, appearance, and memories had all been sealed. Now that his Dantian had been unsealed, Chang Yu's appearance had gradually recovered, and even his memories had returned bit by bit. Chang Yu remembered his sect, his family, and his hatred. Yes, he should go back to the cultivation world that belonged to him. Chapter 820. He couldn't bear to part with the Nether Flame Army, couldn't bear to part with his little master, couldn't bear to part with his brothers, and even more couldn't bear to part with this woman in front of him. Mu Yan's expression is calm. She looks at him calmly and slowly says, Chang Yu, you should understand that I can't give you any response, and I don't want you to have any false expectations. I don't like you. I don't like you. 5 words, resolute and decisive, leaving no room for negotiation. Chang Yu felt as if his heart had been ruthlessly slashed by a knife, dripping with blood. But the pain was so satisfying. He already knew that he didn't have any extravagant hopes, but at this moment, he finally lost all hope. Instead, he felt an indescribable sense of relief. Chang Yu laughed softly. He rarely laughed, and his expression was always indifferent and distant, as if he was incompatible with everything in the world. But when he smiled, he gave off a gentle feeling of peace and happiness. Miss, I've never had any wishful thinking. I just want to guard you, guard little master, and live like that with the Nether Flame Army. I know you won't like me, but you can't stop my feelings for you. Even I can't stop myself. I'm sorry, Mississippi. Can you please allow me to stay in the Nether Flame Army and stay by your and little master's side? Mu Yin is a little startled. Chang Yu's calm, sorrowful, and humble request made her heart uncomfortable. After a long while, she stood up and said with a smile, What nonsense are you talking about? You've always been a member of the Nether Flame Army, one of the captains of the Ink Camp. You don't need anyone's permission to remain here, and no one has the right to expel you. After saying that, she didn't say anything else and turned to leave. Chang Yu stared blankly at her back as she left, then chuckled softly. This was great. He could still stay in the Nether Flame Army and protect her. This was really great. Chang Yu stretched out his hand and suddenly took out a flickering light blue flower from his bosom. He murmured, Miss, happy birthday. Mine's birthday has long passed. However, the Agerasia flower that he had personally picked was a birthday gift that could never be given away. Mu Yin returned to her room and quickly entered the space. Xiaobao had been in seclusion since 3 days ago. His current cultivation base was already at high-level Xiantian realm. If there were no accidents, he would be at the peak of the innate realm. Next, he would temper his body and soul and ascend to the cultivation continent. Although he doesn't know when Dimingju will return, but if he can ascend to the Xiujin continent, at the very least, she can be a little closer to Dimingju, a little closer. Mu Yin gently caresses Xiaobao's little face, then she looks at the fat rabbit that has already grown a lot of white fur. He casually tossed a few pills to it. The fat rabbit howled and pounced over, pulling the pill over and chewing on it like it was candy. Qiuqiu, who was watching from the side, was extremely envious. She also wanted to eat candy. However, Little Phoenix was only a spiritual body now and could only draw power from Little Bao, and he couldn't eat anything. Every time she saw the fat rabbit holding a large pile of delicious food and eating heartily, she would be so jealous that her face contorted. Mu Yin looks at the little guys for a while, and her expression suddenly changes. He quickly left the space. Just as she returned to her room, a black shadow silently descended from the sky. Mu Yin's pupils suddenly contract. Chapter 821. In the room, a powerful pressure filled the air. She only sensed the arrival of this person at the very last moment. Miss June. It was a masked man dressed in black. His voice was hoarse and coarse, filled with urgency. "My lord has been seriously injured. Please come with me to treat him." "What did you say?" Mayan's complexion greatly changes. Deming Ju was seriously injured? How did he get hurt? However, the black-clothed masked man did not say anything else. With a shake of his body, he disappeared on the spot. Mu Yin frowns. From this black-clothed man, she indeed felt the same aura as Ing Mei and the others. It was not the circulation of spiritual power, but the essence, qi, and spirit emitted from the body. It was as if they were born from the same land, and the same qi of heaven and earth. This person should also be from the Shoshin continent. Could it be that Deming Ju was really injured? As soon as she thinks of this possibility, Mayan's brain seems to explode with a loud bang, unable to think of anything else. She didn't even think about it as her figure swayed, and she directly chased after the aura left behind by the black-robed man. Two figures streaked across the Hellflame Valley like meteors. No one could see their movements, and no one noticed their departure. Only Changyu, who was standing quietly under the moonlight, seemed to sense something and abruptly raised his head. He frowned and muttered, "Miss, was that Mrs. Aura just now?" After saying those words, Changyu hesitated for only an instant before quickly following after them. Mu Yin follows the black-clothed man all the way to the depths of the Wuwang Mountains. The deeper they go, the calmer Mayan's mind, which was originally unable to think because of anxiety, becomes. Is Deming Ju seriously injured? Although this man has the aura of the Shoshin continent, is he really Deming Ju's subordinate? If Deming Ju was injured, why didn't he come to Hellflame Valley? Instead, they sent him into the dangerous Wuwang Mountains? Everything was so wrong, but Mu Yin still followed them. The newcomer's strength is high and his origins are unknown. The people of Yinwu continent are far from being able to contend with him. If they were to fight in the Nether Flame Valley, perhaps the other party would suffer from the backlash of the Heavenly Tao, but the Nether Flame Army would also suffer heavy losses. This is what Mayan doesn't want to see. Moreover, she still held on to a glimmer of hope. What if Deming Ju is really injured? The moonlight shines like a chain. Tonight, the Wuwang Mountains are strangely quiet. All the mutated beasts seem to have sensed danger and hid in their caves. Not even a shadow appeared. The black-robed man finally stopped in his tracks and knelt respectfully towards the void. "Honorable Envoy, I've managed to accomplish my mission. I've already lured them over. You did very well." In the dark night, an arrogant female voice sounded. Mu Yin slowly raised her head and saw a masked woman dressed in white standing on a hill not far away. Those eyes are looking at Mu Yin with contempt and coldness. It was Long Qingwan's personal maidservant, Furong. Behind Hibiscus, there were a few men dressed in the same clothes as the black-clothed man. Each and every one of them is staring at Mayan like a tiger watching its prey. With a wave of the masked woman's hand, these people immediately rush down the hill and surround Mayan. Furong's gaze then fell on the black-clothed man who lured Mayan here. She smiled and said, "Elder Qi, as long as you can kill that bitch June Mayan today, I will report this to young master. You and the Evolution Moon sect will definitely benefit from it." Chapter 822. Hibiscus no longer pays attention to him, instead looking at Mayan. Her line of sight roams around her face, and a trace of deep jealousy floats up in her eyes. "You're June Mayan? A mere lowly mortal. How could she have such an appearance? Did this slut use this foxy face to seduce the emperor? If she had this face, wouldn't Dijun have a whole new level of respect for her?" Mayan coldly looks at her. "What is your relationship with Deming Ju? Why did you use him to trick me to come here?" "Impudent." Hibiscus flies into a rage. "Dijun's name isn't something that a lowly servant like you can casually call." Mayan rolls her eyes and bluntly says, "Who do you think you are? Whether I call Deming Ju by name or not, what does it have to do with you? When Deming Ju didn't object, what qualifications do you have to babble about?" Hearing that, Hibiscus's voice changes in anger. "Lowly servant, death is at hand, yet you're still so shameless? Since that's the case, I'll let the four of you understand. My young master is Dijun's fiancé. Recently, I learned that Jun was actually seduced by a lowly servant like you in this filthy place of the Yinwu continent. After my young master learned about it, she threw a big tantrum, wanting to break off the engagement with Jun. Jun naturally went back in person and coaxed our young master, letting her temper subside a bit. As for you, a lowly servant who shamelessly seduced someone else's fiancée, naturally, you couldn't stay. That's why the young master sent me down to clean you up. Hibiscus's words are like a heavy hammer, pounding on Mayan's heart, making her complexion turn deathly pale in a split second. It seems like it's also at this moment that she realizes she actually doesn't understand anything about Mingju. No matter where this person comes from, what kind of past and present he has, what does Jun of the polar domain mean, whether or not he's engaged, whether or not his parents agree to be together with him. She's completely clueless about all of this. Hibiscus looks at her face and immediately reveals a carefree smile, unhurriedly saying, "You should know, when young master issued me an order to get rid of you, lowly servant, Jun was by her side, comforting her. But the emperor didn't say a word. You, a mere lowly mortal, don't really think that you can become the mistress of the polar domain just by climbing onto the bed of the emperor monarch, right? You? What qualifications do you have to be compared to our young master? Our young lord and the arch-emperor are well matched in terms of social status, and their statuses are comparable. What about you? Heh, you can't even compare to an outer disciple who is in charge of sweeping." The more Hibiscus spoke, the more excited she became. But suddenly, a cold and indifferent female voice interrupted her. "Are you done with your nonsense?" Farong stares blankly, looking at Mayan in disbelief. Her face was still snow-white, but there was no trace of shame or sadness on her face. There was only coldness, especially that pair of peach blossom eyes. It was like a bottomless cold pond. Just looking at it made people shiver. Farong was awed by the look in her eyes. She suddenly came back to her senses and was filled with disbelief. She was shocked by a mortal just now? How was this possible? What fiancé? Don't tell me that this fiancé was bestowed by your young master due to his own wishful thinking? Farong's complexion suddenly stiffens. Chapter 8:23. Mayan sneers. Turns out, it's just a rotten peach blossom of Mingju. That's all. She casually brushed her long hair, her every movement exuding an indescribable elegance and nobility. Hibiscus was clearly looking down at her from above, but she unexpectedly felt a sense of inferiority. Mayan carelessly looks at her, her smile full of ridicule. "I know that my family's Mingju is outstanding, and there are always those women who think they're in love who want to throw themselves at him. It's just that he didn't expect that there's such a shameless woman in the Yinwu continent, but there's even one in the Xiaoxian continent. How ugly and useless is your young master? He can't get married, so he has to stick to someone else's man?" In the dark of the night, the Wuwang Mountains were deathly silent. Hibiscus and the surrounding black-clothed people all look terrified and aghast as they stare at Mayan. You slut. Don't talk nonsense. Our young master is the celestial emperor's fiancé. Muyin sneers. Just because you say she's your fiancé, she's your fiancé? You asked Mingju, did he agree? If you have the guts, tell him to come out and admit to me that he already has a fiancé. Otherwise, if your young master isn't being overly sentimental and shameless, then what is it? Farong was so scared that she almost fainted. Because she knew that Long Qingwan was currently in the Tian-E Min, using the Tian-E Min's most valuable treasure, the 1,000-mile mirror, to observe every movement here. The young master can clearly hear every word that Jun Mayan says. Hibiscus could not imagine at this time just how angry was the young master in front of the 1,000-mile mirror. In fact, these people might even suffer the wrath of the enraged young master and end up in a miserable state. Originally, Hibiscus had come here to atone for her crimes. But who in the Xiaoxian continent would want to come to this Yinwu continent? In particular, if they stayed in this damned place for a long time, the desolate qi would slowly corrode their meridians and dantian. Once a spiritual body was eroded by the desolate qi, it would take at least a few decades to recover. Furong's cultivation in Tian-e-min wasn't high in the first place. Going back this time would result in even more disastrous losses, but she had no choice but to come. Otherwise, her future would be completely ruined. And all of this is caused by this lowly servant before him, June Mayan. An intense killing intent burst out from Hibiscus's eyes as she gnashed her teeth and said, "Lowly maid. You're just taking advantage of this moment to show off your eloquence. In a moment, I want you to kneel at my feet and weep and repent for what you just said." Mayan raises her hand, and the Tian Emo-chin appears in it. The sound of the zither rang out, and the wind whistled. In an instant, Hibiscus and the black-clothed man's expressions changed. Hibiscus's eyes suddenly light up with a scorching light, her gaze practically glued to the Tian Emo-chin. This is the sacred object of the Kamikaze school, the most precious treasure of heaven and earth, the Tian Emo-chin. Hibiscus's voice trembled. She leaned forward slightly as if she was itching to pounce on him. "Give it to me, June Mayan. Immediately give me the zither in your hand. I might be able to leave your corpse intact." Mayan's fingers moved lightly, and the sound of the zither spun and finally floated in the air. Even Mayan's figure seems like it could fly away at any time. Her sharp and languid gaze falls on Hibiscus and the black-clothed man, her fingertips lightly plucking the strings. "If you want the Tian Emo-chin, then come and snatch it yourself if you have the ability." Shoshin Continent, Tian-e-min. Boom! The tables and chairs in the main hall burst into pieces under the powerful pressure. Chapter 824. Slut, slut, slut. How dare you humiliate me, Lung Qingwan? She is the dignified young master of Tian-e-min, a goddess that many immortals yearn for, an existence that many people envy. And June Mayan? She's just a mortal from the lowliest world, an ant-like existence. What qualifications does she have to laugh at her? What qualifications does she have to mock her? Young master, please calm down. Ling Lan and Lu Zhu kneel behind Lung Qingwan, saying repeatedly that June Mayan is nothing more than a mortal who hasn't ascended. Even if Hibiscus is no good, she can certainly cripple her. At that time, how you want to deal with that slut? Isn't it up to you, young master? That's right, young master. You have a precious body. Why bother with that kind of lowly servant? It wouldn't bring disgrace to your status. Lung Qingwan takes a deep breath, her eyes once again focusing on the Qinli mirror. Just then, the girl in the mirror flips her wrist, and a zither appears, the sound of the zither clanging. Seeing the Tian Emo-chin in Mayan's hands, Lung Qingwan's pupils suddenly contract. She almost blurts out, "Tian Emo-chin." Behind her, Ling Lan and Lu Zhu also look excited. "Young master, the Tian Emo-chin, the most precious Tian Emo-chin of the Shen music sect, is still here." Back then, the Shun musicians could make the three realms tremble with fear. Apart from the crafty and insidious skills of the Shen musicians, it was also because of this Tian Emo-chin that could move unhindered under the heavens. No one could match it. If my Tian-e-min could obtain this Tian Emo-chin, and with the skills of the Shen musicians, young master, in the future, Lung Qingwan's gaze is frighteningly hot. Even the anger, shame, and jealousy from just now turn into a strong greed for the Tian Emo-chin and the skills of the Shen musicians at this moment. With all of this, she can not only dominate the world like the Shun musicians in those days, she can also make the emperor look at her in a new light, and even take the initiative to beg her. Her slender fingers, smeared with blood-red cardamom, press on the Qinli mirror and quickly draw a rune. That's an order to Hibiscus. Kill June Mayan at all costs, seize the Tian Emo-chin and the Shun musicians' inheritance. Even if Lung Qingwan didn't give this order, Furong would still be itching to dismember Mayan's body into 1,000 pieces at this moment, and then take that ancient treasure, the Tian Emo-chin. In Furong's mind, even if June Mayan's talent and cultivation are pretty good, she's still just a mortal in the end. These black-clothed men were the elites of the Evolution Moon sect. Everyone's cultivation had long surpassed the level of Anidia. That's right, people from the upper realms have 90% of their strength suppressed in the Yinwu continent. He couldn't use his spiritual power without restraint, nor could he cast powerful spells. They might even suffer a backlash from the erosion of the barren chi. However, spirit cultivators were spirit cultivators after all. They were fundamentally different from mortals. Not to mention anything else, just the aura released by a spirit cultivator was enough to cause the entire world to tremble. To the mortals of the Yinwu continent, it would pose a fatal threat. After Furong gave the order, Elder Chi, who was the leader of the group, didn't make a move. Instead, he directed the disciples to attack. However, Junmayan's strength far exceeded his expectations. A figure flew out and crashed into a rock. His face turned pale, and he spurted a mouthful of blood. Elder Chi glanced at him, and his brows furrowed. That person was his favorite disciple, and his cultivation was already at the 8th level of Anidia. But unexpectedly, he couldn't withstand 3 moves from Junmayan. Chapter 8:25. Elder Chi takes a deep look at Mayan and says in a deep voice, "I really underestimated you. That being the case, let me see for myself how powerful the Shun musician's successor is." Almost as soon as Elder Chi's voice falls, Mayan's expression suddenly congeals. The zither in her hand spins, emitting 7 colored rays of light. 7 Sword Spirit activates. At the same time, Elder Chi's attack arrives. In the Yinwu continent, most of the weapons in the Shojin world are unusable. That's because there's no 5-star spiritual energy between heaven and earth here, only a thick aura of desolation. But Elder Chi is holding a bronze-yellow circular object in his hand, and he doesn't know what it is. As he soars into the air, the spiritual energy within his body is operating. That circular object suddenly expands, and it quickly soars into the air. The next moment, countless icicles fall down like a rainstorm. There's a crackling sound, accompanied by a burst of dust and grass flying. But immediately, these dust and grass are frozen in the air. The temperature within a 100-meter radius dropped to freezing point in an instant. Even the 7 swords surrounding Mayan seem to be frozen by this frost, their light dimming little by little. But the disciples of the derived moon sect aren't affected by this frost in the slightest. The long sword in their hands whistles, spiritual energy frantically operating. The pace under their feet seems to have suddenly sped up dozens of times. In a flash, they've already rushed in front of Mayan, who is frozen and unable to move. Swish, 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 swish. Countless sharp swords containing spiritual energy stab towards Mayan. Hibiscus stands high on the hill, the corners of her mouth hooking up into a cruel and disdainful smile. Compared to the trash of the Yinwu continent, Junmayan's talent and cultivation may indeed be considered pretty good. But to fight against the Tiani Min and the young master, that's a real joke. Just the attacks of a few small fries of the derived moon sect can already pierce her heart with 1,000 arrows, dying without a burial ground. But the next moment, Hibiscus hears the cries of alarm of the derived moon sect's disciples. My spiritual energy. Why is my spiritual energy frantically disappearing? What did you do to us? All the derived moon sect's disciples surrounding Mayan and attacking her have frightened expressions. Their faces, which were originally filled with complacency and excitement, turned deathly pale. Their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Even the frost released by Elder Chi, which originally had no effect on them, was crawling up their bodies bit by bit. Elder Chi's expression changed drastically. He waved his hand, wanting to pull his disciple back. His spiritual aura was powerful, and in a split second, 3 disciples were swept back by him. But the remaining dozen, or so people seemed to stick around Mu Yin. His expression grew more and more terrified, and his body trembled more and more. A moment later, wounds began to appear on those people's bodies. And these scars were exactly the same as the shape of the swords they attacked. At the same time, accompanied by the intermittent sound of the zither, a silver-white light shines brighter and brighter on Mayan's body. Shocked and furious, Elder Chi was about to leap up. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. The dozen or so disciples flew out and fell heavily to the ground. His body twitched, and his eyes rolled back into his head. He was no longer able to get up. As the white light dissipates, Mayan's figure appears. Chapter 826. Her face was paler than rice paper, and her body was so weak that it seemed like she could collapse at any time. However, a cold smile slowly appeared on her beautiful face. After Divine Hand weaves the heavens leveled up, it's truly frightening. After Mu Yan's Shun musician skills reached the 3rd level, many of her skills have also been upgraded. This included Divine Hands, which could only form a protective barrier. The current Divine Hands could not only form a protective barrier, but they could also reflect and absorb enemy attacks. However, if the enemy's cultivation was stronger than hers, she would definitely be able to defeat them. Mu Yin will bear the overflowing damage. Therefore, Mu Yin had killed more than half of the people from the derived moon sect with this strike. But in reality, she had also paid a high price for it. Elder Qi's eyes are lifeless. He didn't think that killing a mortal of the Yinwu continent, a task that he thought he could easily complete, would be a task. He had actually lost so many of his elites. He suddenly glares at Mayan, his eyes almost spitting fire. How dare you kill my sect's people? Bitch, I'll take your life right now. Elder Qi suddenly soared into the sky. The strange weapon in his hand seemed to be summoned by him as it suddenly grew bigger. But this time, it wasn't an icicle that fell. Instead, it was a raging fire. Along with the raging flames, Elder Qi's attack was also like the pressure of Mount Tai. Mu Yin only feels as if the ground under her feet has turned into blazing lava. The soles of his shoes were burned through, and the soles of his bare feet were scarred. But she didn't even have time to care about the injury on her foot. Elder Qi's attack was like a torrential storm, accompanied by scorching flames, not giving her a chance to breathe. In the face of absolute power, no matter how many techniques there were, they were just fancy decorations. The scars on Mayan's body increase one by one, and the spiritual energy and internal force within her body dry up little by little. On the other hand, Elder Qi's attacks were like a never-ending storm. At any time, this lonely boat of hers would be smashed into pieces. Hibiscus finally felt at ease when she saw this scene. This time, Jun Mayan is bound to die. Elder Qi, who was attacking crazily, had the same thought. However, a cup of tea had passed. A quarter of an hour passed. Half an hour had passed. Elder Qi's attacks are still like a violent storm. Mu Yin's figure is still dyed red with blood, on the verge of collapse. But she actually didn't fall. Elder Qi's face was filled with fear. What was going on? What the hell was going on? This woman's blood should have been drained long ago, and her spiritual power should have been used up long ago. But why hadn't she collapsed? Elder Qi could already feel that the spiritual energy in his body was getting lesser and lesser, gradually drying up. However, the young girl who he thought would soon collapse and become a fish on his chopping block was still stubbornly standing. He didn't believe it. He doesn't believe that he, a dignified elder of the derived moon sect, can't even kill a mortal of the Yinwu continent. An angry roar. Elder Qi gathered the remaining spiritual energy in his body, and the magic weapon in the air suddenly returned to him. It turned into a long spear and shot towards Mu Yan's chest. Demon woman, go to hell. However, there was no sound of a sharp blade piercing through flesh, and the scene of blood splattering did not appear again. Elder Qi felt the spear in his hand being obstructed by a force, unable to move forward. Chapter 827. The girl's voice is hoarse and weak, but it carelessly and softly rings in his ear. All right, I've let you show off for so long. Now, it should be my turn, right? Elder Qi's eyes suddenly widen, a little bit of fear emerging in the depths of his eyes. This woman, what is she saying? Such a thought just flashes through his mind. Elder Qi feels a seven-colored light flickering in front of him, merging into one. He can't even clearly see what it is, but he feels a tearing pain in his chest. Elder Qi instinctively wants to use spiritual power to resist the attack, But in the next moment, fear emerges in his eyes. His dantian is completely empty, without a trace of spiritual power remaining. And in the Yinwu continent, it's impossible to absorb even a trace of spiritual power from the air. No, this isn't. A hoarse voice comes out of Elder Chi's mouth, but it's immediately drowned out by a large amount of blood. Elder Chi's mouth keeps spilling blood. He slowly lowers his head, only to see his empty chest. His heart, bang. His tall and sturdy figure falls down, smashing into a cloud of dust. Elder Chi is dead. Hibiscus simply can't believe her eyes. Even the veil on her face has long been torn off, revealing a malevolent and horrified expression. This Junmayan, she actually killed Elder Chi? One must know that even though Elder Chi is only a person from the Xiaojin continent, his true strength is no less than hers. Hibiscus's body can't help but tremble, but very soon, she sees that Junmayan, who killed Elder Chi, is swaying, unable to support herself any longer, and falls down. Hibiscus cautiously approaches Mayan. After confirming that there isn't a trace of spiritual power left in her body, that her body is riddled with scars, and that she's on the verge of death, Hibiscus shows a carefree smile. That's right. Even if this Junmayan is more powerful, even if she could really kill Elder Chi, but how could she not pay a little price? Hibiscus looks down at Mayan from above, and even gives her a ruthless kick. Junmayan, if you want to die happily, then immediately hand over the Shun musician inheritance. Otherwise, I'll make you wish you were dead. Mayan's eyes droop, her breathing almost non-existent, as if she's already dead. Hibiscus snorted coldly and was filled with disdain. Her eyes turn and fall on the Tian Imo Chin. The zither looked old and plain, without any luster. However, Hibiscus's eyes lit up, her eyes filled with greed and excitement. This is the ancient treasure that makes everyone go crazy. Tang China. Hibiscus's hand slowly reaches for the Tian Imo Chin, then she holds it in her arms. The Tian Imo Chin doesn't react at all, but it remembers the formidable strength that Mayan had just displayed when she used it. Hibiscus's heartbeat quickened uncontrollably. Junmayan is just a lowly mortal. With the Tian Imo Chin and the Shin musician inheritance, she can become so powerful. What if she obtains the Tian Imo Chin and the Shin musician inheritance? Would she become even more powerful than the young lord? Would she also gain the favor of the celestial emperor? Hibiscus's eyes were filled with intoxication and greed. She doesn't even notice that the strings of the Tian Imo Chin that she's holding in her arms aren't being strummed, but they're gently undulating. The lingering sound of the zither rang in her ears, as if it was weeping and complaining. Chapter 828. He murmurs, Tianyi Min, Lung Qingwan is nothing. As long as I become the successor of the Shin musicians, I can also obtain the emperor's love. I can also obtain everything. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. Furong laughed wildly. He simply doesn't notice that the Tian Imo Chin in his hand is flashing with a 7-colored radiance. Immediately, it transformed into a translucent longsword and pierced through Hibiscus's body. Ah! Hibiscus let out a blood-curdling scream. The 7 absolutes sword flies back to Mu Yin, turns back into the Tian Imo Chin, and then disappears into Mu Yan's body. She staggered to her feet. This time, it was her turn to look down at Furong. Didn't anyone teach you not to touch other people's things? If he moved, he would have to pay a heavy price. A bloody hole appeared in Hibiscus's chest. Just like Elder Chi, there was nothing there. His heart had exploded. She unwaveringly glares at Mu Yin, her voice hoarse and broken. How could it be? You're just a mortal. How could it be? The last breath was stuck in her throat, and Hibiscus completely stopped breathing. Mu Yin let out a long sigh. All the pain and powerlessness in her body surged up in an instant. She had used up almost all of her energy in this battle. If it weren't for the restrictions of the Yinwu continent, it could be said that she has no chance of winning against these people who are far more powerful than her. But no matter what, she had one now. Mu Yin takes out the elixir and puts it in her mouth. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically. In the night sky of the Wuwang Mountains, a strong wind suddenly blew. Mayan raises her head and sees that the originally pitch-black horizon has been dug out by someone at some unknown time. The whirlpool in the cave surged as if it was connected to another world. Then, 3 figures flashed out of the cave. The leader of the group was a masked woman whose entire body was snow white. His entire body exuded an arrogant and cold temperament. Behind her stood 2 maidservants, one dressed in blue and the other in green. Useless thing, you can't even deal with a lowly bitch, and even the young master has to personally take action. Ling Lan glanced at Furong's corpse in disgust, and she even dared to draw a portrait of the monarch. She died just like that. She really got off lightly. Lung Qingwan's gaze falls on Mayan. He was aloof, cold, and disdainful, and he seemed like he was looking at an ant that he could crush at any moment. June Mayan, do you think that if you can climb onto God Monarch's bed, you will definitely be able to soar into the sky and be blessed with glory? Mayan raises her eyes to look at Lung Qingwan. She couldn't even stand steadily and could faint at any time. However, there was no trace of fear on her face. Instead, the corners of her mouth curled up to reveal a mocking smile. So, you're that self-delusional fiancé. Lung Qingwan's eyes flashed with a strong killing intent, but soon after, it turned into a condescending pity. Death is near at hand, but your courage is not small. No wonder you would shamelessly seduce Monarch. However, you're still a bastard. In my eyes, your life is worth less than an ant's. If I want to kill you now, it might be easier than killing an ant. You should be very clear about this. Lung Qingwan chuckled. But don't worry, I won't kill you yet. In reality, the moon's spiritual root in your body is rarely seen in this world. Furthermore, you are born with such a foxy and seductive nature. If I were to give you to some influential person who likes to cultivate in demonic arts, I believe it would not be a bad idea. Chapter 829. At that time, Jun and I will live together, a loving husband and wife, and you can only moan under a different man. Lung Qingwan's voice is faint and cold, as if she's just casually narrating. But in fact, her words contain a powerful soul-sucking power. She saw June Mayan kill Furong, and the Elder of the Flowing Moon sect with her own eyes in the Qinli mirror. Lung Qingwan's hatred towards June Mayan grows, but she also longs for the Shun musician inheritance and the Tian Mochi. She firmly believes that June Mayan, as a lowly mortal, has such strength, and it must be due to the Shun musician inheritance. Jun falling in love with her must also be because of the Shun musician inheritance. What if she was the one who obtained this inheritance? Lung Qingwan's heart is full of fiery desire, so much so that she suppresses the desire to kill Mayan immediately. Instead, she hopes to provoke her with words and control her with the soul-sucking spell when her mind is agitated and angry. Let her become his slave puppet. At that time, the Shin musician inheritance and the Tian Emochin will be hers, and June Mayan will be at her mercy. Sure enough, under the attack of her words and mental power, Mayan's complexion becomes increasingly pale, her body is on the verge of collapse, and the light in her eyes is gradually replaced by confusion. Lung Qingwan's mouth hooks up into a cold smile. Just as she is about to continue, the corners of Mayan's mouth suddenly hooks up into a lazy curve. The careless voice softly speaks with ridicule. Now, I really have some sympathy for Di Mingju, to be fancied by such a self-delusional and crazy woman like you. You said that you and Di Mingju will be a loving husband and wife, and live together, and you're embarrassed? Did Di Mingju agree? Seeing your artificial face, won't he feel disgusted and still be in love with you? Mayan slowly raises her head. The dazed and painful expression on her face has long disappeared without a trace. Her complexion is still pale, and her body is still weak, as if it could collapse at any time. But the smile on her mouth is lazy and noble, as if the one being despised as an ant isn't her, but Lung Qingwan. And these words of hers ruthlessly stab Lung Qingwan's heart. The scene of Di Mingju being cold and disgusted towards her, but caring and gentle towards June Mayan flashes before her eyes. Her face twisted as she gnashed her teeth and said, "Bitch, how dare you humiliate me?" Mayan sneers, her fingers lightly plucking the strings of the zither. "A person will humiliate himself, and you will be humiliated by others. Since you've brought about your own humiliation, I will naturally help you." "Oh, right. There's something else I forgot to tell you. Didn't you ask if Dimingju would still want me if I was tainted and unclean? I'm really sorry, I had a child 5 years ago, but Dimingju said that he didn't care." "This fairy is really noble and elegant, pure as ice and jade. It's just a pity that my family's Dimingju doesn't fancy you, and disdains you for being disgusting. What should we do then?" Lung Qingwan could only feel the annoying sound of the zither ringing in her mind. And Mayan's words are like needles, stabbing into her heart. Her mind was like thunder echoing over and over again. Jun Mayan, that slut, once had a child, but Jun didn't care and still wanted her. As for himself, she was infatuated with the emperor, and her status was 100 times higher than this slut's. But the emperor only felt disgust and hatred towards her. Why? In what way is she inferior to this slut? Finally, Zheng, the sound of the zither resounds. Chapter 830. Young Mistress. Ling Lan and Green Bamboo cried out in alarm, hurriedly supporting her. Lung Qingwan heaved a sigh of relief. She sensed that she had consumed more than half of her spiritual power, as well as her severely injured primordial spirit. He roared, "Kill her! Kill this bitch! She wants Mayan to die. Even if he doesn't want the Shin musician inheritance, he must let this slut die without a burial ground. She hates Jun Mayan for getting Dimingju's affection that she could only yearn for even in her dreams. But what makes her crazily jealous and hateful is that she had just gathered all of her mental power to attack Mayan. She thought that it was a sure win, but she didn't expect that not only was Jun Mayan not affected in the slightest, she was instead killed by Jun Mayan. What did this mean? Could it be that this slut's psychic power was stronger than hers? How could Long Qingwan accept such an outcome? Ling Lan and Lu Zhu received the order and simultaneously soar up. The long swords in their hands carry a formidable pressure as they stab straight towards Mayan. After Mayan's zither counterattacked Long Qingwan, the last bit of strength in her body was also drained away. She stood there quietly, looking at the long sword that was about to take her life. His eyes were calm, but there was a hint of reluctance in them. "7 brilliance," she said softly in her heart. "I'll dissolve the contract with you right now and set you free. Don't forget what you promised me. Protect Xiaobao for me." 7 brilliance was silent for a moment before he slowly said, "If you take the initiative to terminate the contract with me, your soul will scatter and you will never be able to reincarnate. But as long as you refine my primordial spirit, the Tian Emochin's power will completely erupt. These scum would all die. Are you sure you won't consider it?" Mayan hooks up the corners of her lips, revealing a gentle and affectionate smile. "Qi Huang, you always talk so much nonsense." Erupting the Tian Emochin's full power might be able to kill the person in front of him. However, 7 brilliance would once again fall into a deep slumber, his mind and soul injured. The most important thing is that the Yinwu continent will be annihilated. She couldn't even bear to injure the people of the Nether Flame Army in the Battle of Hell Flame Valley. How could she bear to let the Yinwu continent and the people she cares about on this main road be annihilated? Mu Yin suddenly closes her eyes, clenches her hands into fists, and slowly loosens them. 2 totem marks slowly appeared on her palms. "I, Jun Mayan, today use my soul as a sacrifice, my life as a vow, to dissolve the Tian Emochin." In the space of the Tian Emochin, the red-clothed youngster stands alone in the green field. A pair of bottomless phoenix eyes stared unblinkingly at the young girl outside. A cold and resolute vow was spat out from his thin lips. As long as the oath is made, he can cancel the master-servant contract with Mayan without paying any price. Qi Huang was never willing to become a servant of filthy humans. However, as an artifact spirit, it had no other choice. At this moment, he was finally going to regain his freedom. However, as Qi Huang stared blankly at the lonely figure in the dark night, he didn't feel the slightest bit carefree. A vague image flashed through his mind and then disappeared without a trace. Seven Brilliance stretched out his hand, his eyes blurred as if he wanted to stop something. Just then, before Mu Yin could finish chanting the incantation, Green Bamboo and Ling Lan's attacks had already arrived. The long sword descends from the sky, aiming straight for the top of Mayan's skull. Seven Brilliance didn't even think about it and struck out with his palm. In an instant, the incantation to dissolve the contract was interrupted. Green Bamboo and Ling Lan's swords were also swept to the side. Chapter 831. Mayan stares blankly, looking down at her palm where the light has disappeared. Anger finally appears on her calm face. Qi Huang, what are you doing? Didn't we agree on the conditions? Can't this sage go back on his word? In the space, Qi Huang sits down on the lawn and disdainfully says, "This sage doesn't want to cancel the contract with you. This sage intends to die with you and your son." The blue veins on Mayan's forehead throb, almost wanting to curse out loud. This son of a bitch, who wants to die with him. How could she allow her baby to die? But it's all too late. Ling Lan and Lu Zhu make a comeback. The wind whistles, and the two swords burst into blazing flames. Mayan closes her eyes in despair, cursing Qi Huang, that willful bastard, 1,000 times in her heart. Her divine sense sinks into the space, and what she sees is Xiao Bao's adorable appearance as he sits cross-legged with his eyes closed. How she wants to see her baby grow up, how she wants to accompany him to old age. But she didn't expect that even if she's reborn, they would only have a short 5-year mother-son bond. Mayan's spiritual tentacles gently caress Xiao Bao's white and tender cheeks, then resolutely and thoroughly seals the space. Her death will cause the space to collapse, but the Tian and Mo Qin won't disappear. Perhaps, her baby still has a chance of survival. The moment Mayan seals the space, Xiao Bao suddenly opens his eyes and murmurs, "Nyang Qin." Just as Mayan's divine sense leaves the space, the swords have already whistled in front of her. Ling Lan and Lu Zhu's cultivation is far higher than Elder Qi and Forong's. Even in her heyday, Mayan doesn't think that she can deal with them. What's more, at this time, she doesn't have the slightest bit of spiritual power and internal force in her body. Mayan slowly closes her eyes, waiting for death to come. However, the expected pain of being burned and pierced by the flames doesn't come. Instead, Mayan feels a warm energy envelop her. She opens her eyes and sees a tall figure blocking in front of her. That figure has been pierced by Ling Lan and Lu Zhu's swords. The flames burn on his wounds, making a sizzling sound as his flesh is scorched and his blood is evaporating. However, he didn't even flinch as he firmly protected her behind him. Mayan's pupils suddenly contract, her chapped lips slightly open, and her hoarse voice seems to break. "Chong, you!" Her voice caused the body in front of her to sway and slowly fall down. Ling Lan and Green Bamboo withdrew their swords and curled their lips in disdain. He's actually a spirit cultivator. Judging from the fluctuation of his spiritual power, he should be related to the Raging Flame sect. Oh, I didn't expect this bitch to be able to seduce so many men. They are so infatuated with her that they don't even want their lives. So what if she's capable? She's going to die anyway. Everything she has now will belong to our young master from now on. Mu Yin stares blankly at Changyu, who is lying in front of her. Her eyes seem to be dyed red by the blazing flames. With her psychic power, she could clearly sense that Changyu was losing his life force bit by bit. She wants to play the Tian and Mo Qin. She wants to use the Saint of Benevolence to save his life. But now, there was not even a little bit of spiritual power in her body. She could only watch helplessly as Changyu walked towards his death, powerless to do anything. Why? Why did he have to risk his life to delay her survival for a moment? Chapter 832. Why is it that he knows that she won't respond, yet he's willing to do anything. Miss, Changyu grabs her hand with difficulty. His usually indifferent face shows a shallow and gentle smile. I don't care what my past is. I only know that from the moment you took me away from Wanrenku as Changyu, you are my everything. I am willing to give everything to protect you even for a moment. Before he could finish his words, Mu Yin feels a sudden surge of spiritual power madly pouring into the hand that's holding her. Mu Yan's eyes suddenly widen. Changyu. She desperately wants to shake off Changyu's hand, but Changyu's grip is very, very tight. Gurgling, turbulent spiritual power flows into her body. At the same time, Changyu's cultivation and innate spiritual roots also flow in. Little by little, her dried-up dantian is filled with external spiritual power. Although it's accompanied by the pain of her meridians being torn apart, the majestic power also returns at the same time. There's also the cultivation that Mu Yin has been suppressing, not letting it break through the zero boundary point. At this moment, it's like an erupting volcano, no longer able to be suppressed. Changyu looks at the girl's slowly rosy complexion in front of him, her body brimming with power. A satisfied and gentle smile appears on his face. On the contrary, his own appearance gradually becomes old and thin, until his appearance is haggard. The hand holding Mu Yin finally weakly hangs down. Mu Yan's body trembles, and her eyes redden. But she doesn't waste any time, and quickly takes out the Tian emoji to play. Changyu's vitality has already dried up. But even if there's only a glimmer of hope, she will never give up. However, a withered hand presses on the strings, preventing her from moving. Changyu's old and hoarse voice slowly speaks. Miss, don't waste your energy. Mu Yin bites her lip and angrily says, shut up. She pushes Changyu's hand away, wanting to play the Tian emoji. But Changyu says softly, Miss, towards you. I never had any improper thoughts, but I'm going to die now. You, cough, cough. Can you allow me to die in your arms? His muddy and aged eyes try to fall on Mu Yan's beautiful face, but his vision is so blurry. The last trace of spiritual power in his body dissipates, taking away his only chance of survival. Mayan closes her eyes, tears rolling down her cheeks. She reached out and lifted Changyu up, placing him on her lap. He was supposed to be a sturdy man, but at this moment, he was as light as a piece of dry firewood that could dry up and break at any time. Mayan clenches her teeth and whispers, Changyu, tell me, what other wishes do you have? I will fulfill them for you. Changyu chuckled softly. He raised his right hand with great difficulty and slowly fumbled around in his clothes. In the next moment, a beautiful flower with a faint red glow appeared in his hand. That was the everlasting youth flower. Changyu raises his head, looking for Mu Yan's face. He could no longer see anything in front of him, but the girl's bright and beautiful face was clearly imprinted in his mind. In the turbid and evil world, hell was boundless. The young girl, whose clothes were as white as snow and whose slender fingers plucked the strings of the zither, was like a ray of light that illuminated his chaotic and dark life. From then on, he sank into obsession and was consigned to eternal damnation, but he was willing to endure it. Chapter 833. Miss, happy birthday. Her 5 fingers gently loosen, and the everlasting youth flower falls into Mayan's palm. Changyu's hands droop down, his eyes slightly closed, a serene and satisfied smile on his face. Sure enough, she's a remnant of the Shen musicians. She only knows how to seduce others, but she can actually make this stupid man disobey her and die. Heh. You think you can fight against the two of us just because you've recovered some of your spiritual power? What a joke. Ling Lan and Green Bamboo looked disdainfully at Changyu, who had stopped breathing, and raised their swords. Just now, when Changyu transferred his spiritual power and cultivation to Mayan, they naturally saw it. But so what if he had spiritual power? He was just a piece of trash at the body-forging stage, while they were high and mighty immortals. Bitch, I want to see who will come and save you this time. Ling Lan's long sword flickered with blazing flames, stabbing straight at Mayan. Clang! The sword was blocked halfway. It was accompanied by the hum of the zither. Boundless energy surged out along with the sound of the zither. A strong wind blew as if it wanted to overturn the world. However, there was no fear on Ling Lan and Green Bamboo's faces. In the face of an absolute gap in strength, no matter what kind of technique or amazing talent, it was just a joke. They were not trash like Hibiscus, nor were they normal spirit cultivators like Elder Chi. They were the elites selected from the dignified Tian-E Min and the trusted aides of the Tian-E Min's young master. Killing Jun Mayan is as easy as turning one's hand. Ling Lan withdrew her long sword and slashed it across the ground. A deep ravine appeared with a rumbling sound. The entire Wuwang Mountains were shaking. Green Bamboo soars into the air, the long sword in her hand quickly waving, interweaving into a sword net that is as dense as the stars, completely enveloping Mu Yin. As the net of swords falls, Mayan's body will be dismembered into 1,000 pieces. Rumble. Suddenly, a clap of thunder came from the sky. The lightning struck down from above, right beside Green Bamboo. Green Bamboo originally did not take the thunder tribulation seriously, but suddenly felt a huge energy sweeping over. She cried out in pain as her entire body was flung away, crashing heavily onto the ground. The thunder grew louder and denser. The starless and moonless night sky also began to change. The huge silver moon was hanging high in the eastern sky. 9 stars of different colors surrounded the silver moon. Rotating bit by bit, the stars and the moon intertwined. But what was even more strange was that more and more thunderclouds began to gather around the moon and stars. However, these lightning clouds weren't grayish-black, nor were they ice blue like the ones Little Treasure had experienced during his tribulation. Instead, it was sparkling and translucent like water. In just a blink of an eye, the Yinwu continent that was originally shrouded in silence and darkness is thoroughly illuminated. Heaven and earth shook. Lung Qingwan suddenly raised her head and looked at the strange phenomenon in the sky. Her expression changed greatly. 9 stars and the moon. The night is as dark as day. This is God-slaying tribulation. It's the God-slaying tribulation. Kill her. Hurry up and kill her. We can't let her cross the tribulation. Lung Qingwan's voice suddenly rose, almost breaking. His arrogant and cold face finally revealed a terrified expression. She wanted to immediately teleport away and return her primordial spirit to the immortal cultivation continent. However, the thunderclouds in the sky seemed to have completely locked down this area. No one could escape. Chapter 834. So far, even in the entire Shoshin continent, there are no more than 10 people who have survived the God-slaying tribulation. Every time the God-slaying tribulation fails, it will bring about a calamity of misery and suffering. Lung Qingwan is shocked and angry. Her body can't help but tremble. Jun Mayan, this slut is just a mortal with a mere body-forging stage cultivation. How could she possibly cross the God-slaying tribulation? Naturally, she can't succeed. But once she fails, all the holy spirits in the Wuwang Mountains, including Long Qingwan and the other 2, will be buried with her. Even though it's only her primordial spirit avatar here. But once it's destroyed, Long Qingwan's cultivation will directly lose half. How can she accept this? Now, the only way is to kill Jun Mayan before she attracts more of the God-slaying tribulation. Lung Qingwan's eyes are full of murderous intent. She suddenly soars into the sky, releasing a terrifying pressure. At this moment, she can no longer maintain her high and mighty elegance. She just wants to quickly kill this slut, Jun Mayan, and protect her own cultivation and life. Hearing this, Ling Lan and Lu Shu are even more frightened. Lung Qingwan came to the Yinwu continent with her primordial spirit avatar, but they are the real body. If they are destroyed by the God-slaying tribulation, not only will they die, they will never be able to rise again. Thunder clouds roll over and over in the sky, reflecting colorful light. Thunder falls one after another, and each one can directly annihilate a mountain peak in the Wuwang Mountains. In the mountains, the mournful screams of strange beasts echo everywhere as they flee in fear. However, this mountain range seemed to have been cut off from the rest of the world and had become a cage where only death awaited. As Mayan's cultivation breaks through the bottleneck of the peak pre-celestial realm, the lightning tribulation will fall more and more frequently, until everything shrouded by the thunder clouds is destroyed. Under the moonlight, the girl in white is bathed in blood, but she stands proudly. She holds a small flower that emits a light blue light in her hand. After staring at it for a while, she carefully puts the flower in her bosom. Mayan raises her head. Her ears are filled with Long Qingwan's angry shouts, Ling Lan and Lu Zhu's frightened and resentful shouts. Her mouth curls up into a cold and mocking smile. Don't you think of me as an ant and trash? Now, all of you are going to be buried with me, an ant. How do you feel? June Mayan, you're crazy. Lung Qingwan bellows. I order you to stop your advancement immediately. Do you hear me? There's no way you can withstand the god-slaying tribulation. Do you want to die? Mu Yin raised her head to look at the sky. The terrifying power coming from the crystal-clear thunderclouds made her feel as if her soul was trembling in fear. Of course, she knew that she could not survive the god-slaying tribulation. As a matter of fact, she had no idea what a god-slaying tribulation was. However, the moment Changyu closed his eyes, a crazy killing intent surged in her chest. There was only one thought in her mind. She needed powerful strength. She wanted to kill this group of dregs and make everyone here accompany Changyu in death. After that, her cultivation finally broke through the critical point. Powerful energy burst forth from his body. What followed was god-slaying calamity. Chapter 835. As soon as her voice falls, the spiritual power within Mu Yan's body suddenly erupts. The Tian Emo Qin in his hand flashes, instantly transforming into 7 long swords. 7 sword spirits, activated. The attacks of Ling Lan, Green Bamboo, and Long Qingwan instantly fell on the 7 sword spirit. Mu Yin fiercely spits out a mouthful of blood, her frail body on the verge of collapse. But at the same time, the thunderclouds in the sky became thicker and thicker, and the tribulation lightning fell faster and faster. Finally, Ling Lan was struck by a bolt of tribulation lightning. He let out a blood-curdling screech. In an instant, not even a trace of his flesh could be seen before he was turned into ashes. Green Bamboo stared blankly at this scene, her face pale. The fear and despair brought by the shadow of death slowly surfaced in her eyes. No, I don't want to die. I don't want to die here. June Mayan, stop, quickly stop. Green Bamboo's hair was disheveled, and even the sword in her hand was lost somewhere. Her face was ferocious like an evil spirit. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws as she pounced towards Mu Yin. Bitch, go die. How can I, a dignified immortal, die in this damned place? Mu Yin looks at her fiendish appearance as she pounces over, and only smiles coldly. He moved back a few meters. Blinding lightning flashed and thunder roared. A bolt of rainbow-colored lightning struck the spot where she had just been standing. Green Bamboo was just about to pounce on him when he suddenly raised his head. The ferocious expression on his face instantly turned into one of panic and despair. The short scream came to an abrupt end. The thunder and lightning blasted a huge hole in the ground. Dust and stones flew everywhere, and not even bones were left. But this time, Mu Yin was also affected a little. His clothes were scorched, and even his hair was slightly curled. Her face was frighteningly pale, and blood kept flowing from the corners of her mouth and the wounds on her body. With her frail body, she can only use the 7 absolute swords, transformed from the Tian Emo Qin to barely support herself so that she won't collapse. However, When her line of sight meets Long Qingwan's venomous and cold eyes, the corners of Mayan's mouth once again hooks up into a lazy and mocking smile. Long Qingwan gritted her teeth. She didn't understand why this woman could still smile when death was at hand. Why wasn't he afraid at all? What she didn't understand even more was that as the dignified young master of Tianyi Min, dealing with a mortal woman should have been an easy task. But why was it that she still couldn't kill this bitch after spending so much effort, losing a few trusted subordinates, and even sacrificing her primordial spirit clone? The thunder in the sky grew louder and louder. The entire Wuwang Mountains had turned into a sea of fire and corpses. In just a little more time, this undulating mountain range would be completely razed to the ground. And now, the dense tribulation lightning was slowly approaching the two of them. There was no way to escape from this inescapable net. Lung Qingwan takes a deep breath, her face once again revealing a proud smile. Do you think that you've won just like that? You will definitely die under the god-slaying thunder tribulation, but I will only lose some cultivation. After you die, how long will the emperor remember you? And how long will he keep his chastity for you? Her lips curled up into a smug and cruel smile. In the end, you can only have everything you have if you're alive. There will be a day when the emperor will forget you and be moved by my tenderness and companionship. At that time, I will still be the final winner. A trace of pain and absent-mindedness flashed through Mayan's eyes. Chapter 836. The 9 stars and the moon have been completely submerged by the thunderclouds. The dark night sky is still as bright as day, but what it brings is not vitality, but the abyss of death. Deming Ju, I'm really sorry. I can't fulfill my promise to stay with you for a lifetime. I'm really sorry for making you wait in vain. Mu Yin retracts her gaze, and it falls back on Lung Qingwan. She chuckles lowly. At this time, you still want to use the soul-absorbing spell on me. Should I say that you're stupid, or that there's something wrong with your brain? Was my previous proof not clear enough? This fairy, your mental power is far less powerful than mine. Why do you want to humiliate yourself again and again? Mu Yan's pupils shrink. A dark light flickers in her eyes. Lung Qingwan's complexion changes greatly. She suddenly holds her head, utters a mournful scream, and falls to the ground. Fresh blood flowed from her mouth and nose, making her originally beautiful face look like that of a malicious spirit. Lung Qingwan suddenly jumps up from the ground and madly pounces towards Mu Yin. Slut, I'll kill you. Mu Yin wants to retreat, but the air suddenly condenses into ice. Her body, which was already riddled with scars, feels like it's filled with lead, and she can't move at all. Poochie. At this time, there's the sound of a sharp blade entering flesh. A severe pain comes from her abdomen. Lung Qingwan's ferocious blood-covered face is close at hand. Slut. This is the Xiujin continent's one and only divine weapon, soul-binding dagger. It's useless for this fairy, but for a mortal like you, it can lock your soul, making you beg for death, unable to return to the afterlife. Mu Yan's face shows a painful expression. The dagger stabs into her abdomen, but it's like throwing a boulder into a calm lake, and in a split second, raging waves. Her 5 viscera and 6 bowels, her dantian and meridians, and her soul seem to be turned upside down at this moment. Lung Qingwan looks at her appearance and laughs. You, a mere mortal, want to compete with me? Who do you think you are? What right do you have to snatch my monarch? A lowly ant like you should obediently shrink in this dirty and disgusting place, What qualifications do you have to think about things that don't belong to you? Pa. A hand covered in blood grabs Long Qingwan's wrist. Long Qingwan's voice paused, and she suddenly met a pair of bottomless peach blossom eyes. The girl's voice was weak and hoarse, but it was still as beautiful as the sounds of nature. If we are ants, then you lofty, greedy, and selfish immortals who want to control the life and death of others are nothing more than disgusting and ugly maggots. Today, I finally know why the Shun musicians wanted to kill everyone in the Shoshin continent. If the Shoshin continent is filled with disgusting scum like you, then it would be better for all of them to die. Long Qingwan flew into a rage. You lowly maid, you actually. Before he could finish, a rumbling sound came from the sky. The expression on Long Qingwan's face suddenly turned into one of panic. Let go. Quickly let go of me. Do you hear me? You slut. Let go of this fairy. Do you know who I am? I am the heaven. I don't care who you are. Mayan smiles eerily. I only know that I've said it before, that all of you present must accompany my subordinates in death. Chapter 837. See you again, never. Ah, no, don't. Let go of me. Let go of me. You slut. I'm going to kill you. Boom. The thunderclouds fall, the rocks tumble, the dust fills the air, and it turns into nothingness. Mu Yin only feels as if her whole body has been crushed by something, and she almost faints from the pain. But she's not dead yet. Long Qingwan's body has already been reduced to ashes. Not even her bones remain. But she's still alive. The 7 absolute swords beside her emits a faint light, shrouding her. That's the divine hand weaves the heavens, launching itself. In the nick of time, it actually managed to save her life. However, this slim chance of survival only allows her to linger at death's door for a moment. The light around the 7 absolute swords flashes and eventually disappears without a trace, turning back into the appearance of the Tian Mo Qin. Like an unremarkable zither, it falls to the ground at the side. Mu Yin lies powerlessly on the ground, looking at the thick thunderclouds in the sky, and slowly closes her eyes. Goodbye, Deming Ju. Goodbye, Xiao Bao. Nyang Qin. A crisp little voice rings in her ears. Mu Yin suddenly opens her eyes and sees the little figure floating in the void. Her calm and indifferent face finally shows a look of panic. Xiao Bao. No, how could Xiao Bao leave the space? Didn't she already seal the space? Qi Huang. It must be that bastard Qi Huang. At this moment, she really wants to tear this trash spirit into pieces. Xiao Bao sits on the fat rabbit, and the rabbit's body expands to several times its original size, floating in the air. A beautiful fire phoenix flaps its wings, gently flying around Xiao Bao. Xiao Bao turns his head, and on his delicate and beautiful little face, there's a pair of red and swollen eyes, clearly crying. But seeing her at this moment, he shows an innocent and happy smile. Yang Qin, don't be afraid. Xiao Bao will protect you. Tears welled up in her eyes, accompanied by a terrifying pain that numbed her heart. Xiao Bao, what are you doing? Quickly return to the space. Xiao Bao shakes his head, his little face full of determination. Xiao Bao has grown up. Xiao Bao vowed to always protect Nyang Qin and never let Nyang Qin come to harm. Rumble. Another bolt of lightning fell, and the fat rabbit howled as it was sent flying dozens of meters away. Mayan's originally exhausted body suddenly pounced over and hugged Xiao Bao in her arms. She didn't know where she got the strength from. Mayan's body is covered in blood and dust. But when Xiao Bao is held in Mayan's arms, he only feels an indescribable peace of mind and happiness. He likes the smell of his mother, and he likes to be with her. He didn't want to be left alone in the space by his mother. He knew that his mother was in pain, but he couldn't do anything about it. Mother, don't blame Brother Chi Huang. I was the one who asked him to let me out. Mother, Xiaobao doesn't want to be alone. Xiaobao wants to be with you. Xiaobao has never been afraid of death. I'm only afraid that I won't have a mother anymore. She could no longer hold back her tears, and they gushed out of her eyes. Mayan tightly hugged the little body in her arms, tightly, and was reluctant to let go. She said in a hoarse voice, "All right, regardless of life or death, Mother and Xiaobao will not be separated." The ground beneath his feet suddenly shook. Chapter 838. The fat rabbit and Qiuqiu raise their heads and look at the sky, their eyes revealing despair. Mu Yan's heart tightens. Looking up, she sees the thick crystal thunderclouds, like Mount Tai pressing down, quickly falling down. This is the final step of the God-slaying tribulation, leaving not even a blade of grass behind. Even if there are powerful cultivators who have withstood the previous thunder tribulation with their strength, they can't withstand the final descent of the divine thunder, the massacre of 10,000 tribulations. What's more, with Mu Yan's current cultivation, she shouldn't have attracted the God-slaying tribulation, and it's impossible for her to survive the God-slaying tribulation. Mu Yan holds Xiaobao tightly, gently patting his back, humming a tune that is out of tune. She's never been good at these things, and she's never given her baby a stable home. However, her baby is always so obedient, so considerate, filling her gloomy world with color. Xiao Bao's face shows a happy smile. Rubbing against Mu Yan's arms, there's not a trace of fear of death in his eyes. He only feels that as long as he can be with his mother, he's not afraid of death. Moreover, this time, he's finally like a man, able to protect his mother. The only regret is that Daddy is not here, and their family will probably never be able to reunite again. Will Daddy miss them in the future? The thunderclouds are getting closer, closer, and closer. The fat rabbit and Qiuqiu are running around, their voices panicked. But when they see the mother and son embracing, the two beasts suddenly stop all their movements, looking at the scene in front of them in shock. They see that Mu Yin and Xiao Bao's bodies are emitting a faint silver light at some point. The silver light is getting brighter and brighter, and the area it covers is getting bigger and bigger. The fat rabbit tries to walk into the silver light, but it only feels indescribably comfortable. On the ground, the originally barren land, little green grass has sprouted out at some point. The The strings of the Tian Emo Chin on the side seemed to be blown by the wind, trembling on their own, making broken but moving notes. The fat rabbit howls and scurries into Xiao Bao's arms. Qiuqiu quickly flaps its wings and stops on Mu Yan's shoulder. In the space, Qi Huang looks at this scene in a daze, then reveals an inexplicable smile. Interesting. I thought it was a dead end. I didn't expect there to be a turning point. Mother and child tribulation. Heh, I thought this kind of thing didn't exist anymore. Junmayan, in the end, how many more surprises do you want to give this soon? I can't wait. The smile on Qi Huang's face seemed to be unable to be restrained. It was clearly an evil smile, but on his beautiful face, it looked like a mischievous youth who had successfully pulled a prank. Boom! An earth-shattering rumble shakes the entire Yinwu continent, as if it's about to be completely destroyed. But almost at the same time, a dazzling white light erupts from the Wuwang Mountains and similarly shrouds the entire Yinwu continent. The earth-shattering momentum seemed to be nipped in the bud the moment the white light shone. The people of Yinwu continent, who were sleeping, wake up with a start. However, he could only see the night sky that was as bright as day, and the light that was gradually dissipating. The sky regained its starless and moonless darkness, and the earth fell into a deep slumber. It was as if nothing had happened, as if everything had happened yesterday. Only the vast Wuwang mountain range had been razed to the ground. Chapter 839. Not to mention Mu Yin and Xiao Bao, there wasn't even a single tree or beast. What's going on? Where's Miss? Where's the young master? What was that earth-shattering thunder just now? From the moment the thunder sounded, the people from the Hellflame Valley rushed over. However, the entire Wuwang mountain range seemed to be enveloped by a layer of enchantment, isolating it from the rest of the world and preventing anyone from entering. What happened here? Will Miss and Little Master be all right? No way. Ru Yin clenched her fists, her eyes staring at the huge pit that was smashed by the tribulation thunder. Gnashing her teeth, she said, "That's a tribulation thunder." That's right. That must be the tribulation thunder that Miss and Little Master attracted when they ascended. Miss and the others only went to the cultivation continent. That's right. It must be the thunder tribulation, Xin Jinglin shouted resolutely and decisively, as if to convince others, and also to convince himself. Yin Yan and Xiaobao are so formidable. Yin Yan could have ascended a long time ago. It's just that she's been suppressing it. She absolutely won't die. Absolutely nothing will happen to her. Yes, yes, that must be the lightning tribulation. Back then, when Little Master had advanced to the Xiantian realm, he had attracted a terrifying lightning tribulation. Now that Little Miss had ascended, the lightning tribulation would naturally be extremely terrifying. Miss must have been afraid that we would be injured by the lightning tribulation, so she secretly came to the Wuwang mountain range. No matter how powerful the lightning tribulation is, young mistress and little master are even more omnipotent. They must have successfully transcended the tribulation by now and are galloping around the cultivation continent. Voices kept ringing out. At first, they seemed to be comforting themselves, but slowly, everyone became more and more determined. That's right. Who was Jun Mayan? She is Yinwu continent's most unique, most amazing genius for thousands of years. No, perhaps it should be said that he was an unprecedented monster. Their young master was even more unparalleled in the world. How could a mere thunder tribulation hurt their young miss and young master? We also need to work harder. Some people clenched their fists and looked at the gray sky with yearning and longing. Miss is waiting for us in that wider world. That's right. We have the spirit molding pill and the various cultivation pills that Miss left behind. We will definitely be able to advance successfully. When we reach the cultivation continent, we will also follow Miss and protect her. We, the Nether Flame Army, will live and die together and will never be separated. Through life and death, never apart. Following the tsunami of slogans, everyone's face showed a determined expression. Their eyes were blazing like fire, burning with ambition and conviction. Nothing could extinguish that kind of fire. Yin Haoyin, Feng Haitang, Ru Yin and Bai Yichen looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's eyes. Yes, Miss and Little Master would never die. And they absolutely did not want to stop moving forward and be left far behind by those two. They were still hoping that one day, the Nether Flame Army would be able to reunite on that vast land. Among the crowd, only Guan who looked around and frowned slightly. Changyu is not here? Did he ascend together with Miss? In the dark eastern sky, a wisp of orange-red light shone through the clouds. This desolate land that was riddled with holes was dyed with fresh colors. This used to be the Wuwang mountain range with the most exuberant life force. But now, not even a single remnant of life remained. Chapter 840. A clump of green grass grew slowly and laboriously, swaying gently in the breeze. One day, this patch of green grass would spread for tens of thousands of miles, and it would once again become the Wuwang mountain range that was filled with lush foliage and life. Just like the lives of the Yinwu continent, they were ordinary and insignificant. In the eyes of the high and mighty immortals, they were like ants, like insignificant flames. But this group of ants, these little flames, were so insignificant. As long as they were given a corner of the world, a turning point, a spark could start a prairie fire, and ants could overturn the world. Xiaoxian continent, Tian Yimin. In a tightly shut secret room, Long Qingwan opened her eyes and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. On the 3 praying mats beside her, hibiscus, lily of the valley, and green bamboo had all been reduced to ashes. Long Qingwan felt the empty spiritual power in her body, as well as the tearing pain in her body. Her eyes were filled with bone-piercing resentment. Suddenly, she thought of something and grabbed the monocular to take a look. But the surface of the 1,000-mile mirror was gray, and nothing could be seen. Only a few cracks appeared on the surface of the mirror. The monocular was destroyed, and the power of God-slaying tribulation was so powerful. 3 of his trusted subordinates were killed, half of his cultivation was lost, and the most valuable treasure of Tian Yimin was destroyed. This time, in order to kill Junmayan, it could be said that she paid a painful price. Unfortunately, that Tian Imo Qin, that Shun musician inheritance, she didn't manage to snatch a single one of them. Long Qingwan's face contorted, but it was soon replaced by a maniacal laugh. So what if we suffer heavy losses? Junmayan, that slut was still killed by me. You want to live together with the monarch. You want to steal what belongs to me, Long Qingwan. This is your end. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Polar domain. Lingxiao Hall. The roar of thunder seemed to resound in his ears. Dimingju abruptly sits up on the bed, his complexion deathly pale. Mayan. After a while, he stood up and walked out without hesitation. However, before he could reach the door, a few people rushed over and knelt in front of him. Lord, you can't leave this place. Dimingju coldly looks at the people kneeling in front of him. Get lost? My lord, please listen to me. Elder Chang knelt on the ground and kowtowed heavily. The mirror of heaven and earth was corroded. You forcibly tore through time and space. Both your body and primordial spirit were severely injured, and your cultivation almost dropped by a level. If you don't recuperate in this soul cultivation house, your cultivation will never recover. That day, Emperor Mingju returned and dealt with Imo Rufeng with the force of a thunderbolt. He forced old Ji to admit his guilt. Just as everyone is rejoicing that everything has calmed down, Dimingju suddenly collapses. Elder Chang went up to take a look, but he was scared out of his wits. Because Dimingju's cultivation has almost directly dropped by a layer, and his primordial spirit is even on the verge of collapse. But even with such a serious injury, no one noticed him at all. He held on until he finished dealing with everything before collapsing. The soul nurturing house was actually a sacred ancestral artifact. It was just an ordinary stone house. There wasn't even any spiritual power in it, and it didn't look special. But this soul recovery house was a treasure that was hard to find in the world. No matter how badly his primordial spirit was injured, he could slowly recover in the soul-nurturing house. Chapter 841. However, Soul Cultivation House had a limitation. It could only be opened once every 3 years. Once it was opened, the person who entered could not leave, or the Soul Recovery House would automatically close. The next time it opened would be 3 years later. When Elder Chang and the others see that Deming Ju is seriously injured, they quickly open the Soul Cultivation House and send him inside. Now, if Deming Ju leaves, the Soul Cultivation House will close, and his injuries will never be healed. Therefore, even if Elder Chang and the others disobey Deming Ju's orders, they will never allow him to leave. Moreover, if Deming Ju's cultivation really falls, and this news spreads out, it would be a fatal blow to the polar domain. So what? Deming Ju's voice is bone-chilling. I said I want to leave. Do you want to disobey Bin Jun's orders? This subordinate wouldn't dare. Elder Chang hurriedly said, My lord, are you leaving to look for Miss June? The thunder tribulation that shook the Yinwu continent. It wasn't just the people there who heard it. The people of the Shoshin continent were also shocked. Many people recognized it as the God-slaying tribulation. Deming Ju's hand suddenly clenches, the bottom of his eyes surging with billowing waves. He shouldn't have come back. In any case, he should have stayed by Mu Yan's side. The God-slaying tribulation was a God-slaying tribulation. Back then, he had barely survived it. How could Mu Yin get through this safely? Deming Ju's figure flickered and was about to leave. Even if he has to risk his cultivation, he must go to Mayan's side. Stop Jun Shang. Eldest brother Chang roars. His whole body pounces over, and he hugs Deming Ju's feet. Star Wolf, Han Yi, and Ning Mei all firmly hold Deming Ju in place, not letting him take a single step out of the Soul Cultivation House. My lord, listen to me. Your marriage lines have not disappeared, and there are no changes. That proves that Miss June is definitely still alive. Ning Mei falls to his knees on the ground, his voice choked with sobs. He kowtows heavily towards Deming Ju, Jun Shang. This subordinate once formed a binding heart curse with the Little Master. This subordinate dares to use his life to guarantee that the Little Master is still alive. Mu Yin was still alive, and so was Xiao Bao. These two pieces of news make the almost insane killing intent in Deming Ju's eyes fade a little. Elder Chang heaved a sigh of relief and quickly said, Although the God-slaying tribulation is difficult, it's not undefeatable. Although Miss June's cultivation was low, she had never been an ordinary person. Perhaps she really survived the God-slaying tribulation and left the Yinwu continent. Junshang, even if you go to the Yinwu continent now, I'm afraid that you won't be able to see Miss June. That's right. Once she passes the thunder tribulation, no matter what kind of thunder tribulation it is, it's impossible for Mayan to stay in the Yinwu continent. Therefore, if she was still safe and alive, she should be somewhere on the cultivation continent. Elder Chang slowly releases Di Mingju's feet and respectfully kneels on the ground. Junshang, this is actually a good thing. Miss Jun's ascension to the Xiuzhen continent means that she's one step closer to you. The Xiuzhen continent is not like the Yinwu continent. Even if you want to go there, there won't be that many obstacles. But the premise is that you have the ability to protect Miss Jun, Junshang. Could it be that you've forgotten Miss Jun's identity? If she appears in the cultivation continent, and even in the cultivation continent in the future, how many people will want her life and everything she has? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.